So the general idea there was that God was going to wipe out all of the wicked, and he was going to only preserve the righteous, which is a failure, complete failure. Because the first thing Noah does, once he gets established in the land, is he plants a vineyard and gets drunk, and then his son subsequently either boinks him or his wife. We don't know which one. The Bible's not entirely clear. I say from the reading of Leviticus that it's more likely that he boinked his mother and produced an illicit lineage, which is why Canaan was cursed as opposed to Ham, because Canaan would have been the illicit offspring from that union, just like the illicit offspring of Lot when he slept with his two daughters were basically cursed. They became the two enemies of Israel, Ammon and Moab. All right, let's see now. What do we got? This is easy, okay, guys? This is an easy question. Name the two kings of Israel who were most frequently involved in marriage alliances. Thank you for the roses, Joyful. Two kings that were frequently involved in marriage alliances. We know this one. We got Solomon. I think I see David. You got it. It's David and Solomon. David and Solomon. That's good. All right. How was Judas replaced as one of the disciples? What method did the 12 disciples, or actually 11 disciples, use to select the new disciple to replace Judas? What method? It wasn't a vote. It was lots. That's right, algorithm. They cast lots, which is why I say there's nothing wrong with being a Christian and using tarot cards, as long as you're looking to Yahweh to give you the information, because all throughout the Bible, Yahweh is used, the divine presence of Yahweh is used for them to cast lots all the time. And so if you can trust Yahweh to cast the right lot, then could you not trust Yahweh to provide you a meaningful tarot reading? I would imagine so. You're not a true Christian unless you trust your life in the hands of casting lots. In fact, anytime you don't know how to make a decision, you should cast lots if you're a Christian, because God is going to give you the right answer by casting lots. That's like kind of his job. Oh, thank you so much for the balloons. I really appreciate that, Olzu. That was really sweet of you. Okay, this is a New Testament question, but this is going to be it's going to be an easy one. Okay, you guys ready? Thank you, EB. Name the province in Asia Minor after whom the Epistle of Galatians is named. You have to spell it correctly. It's hard to spell. Name the province in Asia Minor after whom the Epistle of the Galatians is named. Jerry got it. Is Galatia. Now I see we finally got a couple Christians in here, because they're chirping random prophecies, at least what they think are prophecies, in the comments. If you think that those prophecies are somehow meaningful, I would love for you to get in the guest box and discuss them with me. You just get right in the guest box, and we'll talk about those. We can see if there's any meat on those bones, or if there's really just nothing there. Let's see now. That one's too hard. I was trying to find a New Testament question, because I know a lot of people are familiar with the New Testament. But some of these questions are actually really dang hard. Oh, this is kind of a fun one. Okay. What was the cover piece referred to in most of the Bible translations in English? What was the cover piece of the ark often referred to? The cover of the ark had a really specific name in a lot of the King James and King James-like translations. Oh, those of you who grew up on the King James know exactly what it is. It's not the first class cap. It's the mercy seat. That's right. The mercy seat. The mercy seat's a fun translation. How you doing, GT?
Hey, how's it going?
Good, man.
Just a one quick question. I won't take a lot.
Most of them really don't even believe that the Bible is reliable either. If you just pick up an academic commentary on any of the Old Testament books, you'll discover that there's very little in them that can be traced to historicity, at least not accurate history.
See, I mean, I don't know. That's the first I mean, I don't know of any. I'm Catholic. I don't know of any priests. I mean, not priests. I don't know bishops, popes. I mean, I just, I don't think I've ever seen, and maybe I'm just misinformed. Uh, I
Well,
just don't find that to be
most people
true.
most people who have never gone through biblical studies, scholarly biblical studies, would have no idea what biblical scholars are actually saying, because most of them don't actually know where to even look for in terms of finding scholarly resources. And I didn't know either until I was in school. It wasn't until I got into Bible college and seminary where I actually learned how to do good research and how to vet proper sources and how to determine, what was a proper biblical scholar and what is just some jack off who thinks he's discovered something.
Yeah, see, and that's what I find interesting is that we have people, like you've went to so did you go to seminary school or something of the sort?
Yeah, I went
So,
to Bible college and seminary.
right, so you've been actually schooled on the Bible and that, and
Thank you, Sam.
I would like to see you um uh, I would like to see you debate with someone of the same caliber, as in a priest, a pope, a bishop, or
Oh,
someone who has done it for 30 years. Because
I'll
I've
find them.
honestly, I've on, yeah, I don't. That's why I'm hoping one of these days they'll come on, which I have yet to see anyone take their time. Maybe they think there's more important things than convincing an atheist. I don't know, but you know, I just
The
I
thing of
would
it
love
is, anybody with a similar education level as me, they actually know my argumentation points already. They've already heard them, and they know that there's not actually great rebuttals for them. So
be-
that's why you don't see people with my level of education or higher. Typically, not always, but typically, you don't see people arguing in the affirmative. They're comfortable saying that it's a matter of faith and not fact, and they're okay with that.
Yeah, well, I mean, like you said, I've heard the argument, you know, of from a Christian to an atheist. I've yet to see anybody come up with anything better besides God. And you know, and you disagree.
What do you mean? What do
You
you
don't
mean?
see
Come up with something better than God?
any other than God.
Why do I need to come up with something better than God? The
Well,
burden of
no,
proof that God exists is on the people claiming that God exists.
well, no. I mean, previously you stated that you said the exact opposite of what I just said. You said that prior.
I literally have no idea what you're trying to say. All you're saying right now is that you like the idea of God because you haven't found a better ideal to believe in.
No, what I'm saying is you said the exact opposite earlier, but that's neither here nor there. All right,
Opposite of
I'm
what?
just yeah. I'd like to see you debate a person who really
Thank you, Jay. I
who's on your
appreciate the
level,
helmet. Yeah, well, go
who's
find
on
him.
your level.
All right, go. So, if you're not going to do it, that's fine. But go find him and send him to
Well, yeah,
me.
I didn't go to Bible college. I mean, I have a
Hmm.
bachelor's degree, but it's not in Bible study. I don't think it's.
Thank you, EB.
I don't think the faith needs to be learned. And I mean, they say it's good, but I'm good enough where I'm at. You know, God is a part of my life every day, and that's what gets me through each day.
No,
All
thank you,
right,
Cal. I
God bless, my
appreciate that.
friend.
All right, cheers, GT. Good to see you, man. It's been a bit. Come back soon. I talked to GT a couple months ago, and I haven't seen him ever since. GT and I usually get along pretty well. I don't think we've ever like gotten into like a shouting match or anything. How you doing, Katie?
Not too bad. How you doing yourself?
Doing well. Thanks for asking.
Yeah. So I'm guessing you're against this whole fact that Christianity could be a real
Thank you, Jay.
thing.
I'm not
Well, not
against
that.
it. I just don't think that it's true.
Right. Have you ever practiced it?
Yeah, I was a Christian for 2 decades or more.
Were you born into it?
Not really. I grew up in a culture though where everybody was Christian, so I kind of like if growing up, if you would have asked me if I was a Christian, I would have just said yeah because like culturally everybody was.
Can we
So
get a
this,
win, Dexter, in the chat for sending out 5
oh
subscriptions? Thank you so much, Dexter. Thank you for the support.
yeah, I didn't see that. Thank you so much, Dexter, and thank you, Hanji, for alerting us to that. Big W for Dexter up in here, guys.
But yeah, that's interesting you say that because that is true. Normally people just agree with whatever they think that is gonna be just handier to go with. But the only really thing, like, we could sit and run in circles about this all day, but the only solid evidence that, I don't know if you want to call it evidence, but I want to hear what you have to say about it. The only way that we could prove this, that there's some sort of spirituality is if you follow the free rules, which sounds a bit silly when you don't take it serious. But if you take it serious and actually be like, oh, well, I'll give it a go just to see if it is true, the confessing sins, all that there, repenting and accepting Jesus. And then if it's your time, if you want to say, or if you're 100% sure and ready, then you're meant to receive the Holy Spirit. And then from there, that guides you to knowing that there's God, like the way you know that you love a girl because of that feeling. It's sort of the same thing, but again,
Yeah, well, I don't think feeling something is evidence that God exists because you find that in basically every religion, right? People say,
true.
well, I feel the Hindu gods, especially if you talk to the Mormons. The Mormons are really big when they're trying to convert people into saying, just pray about it and see how you feel. And a lot of people maybe have never prayed before. And then sometimes they go and pray and they do feel something because they're like, oh, wow, this is new. This is interesting, right? Well, I don't think feeling anything, though, is evidence that the God is true.
True enough. Feelings could be many of things.
Right.
Just quick thing, I don't know if you've already answered this or whatever, but what was the solid thing that sort of was your turning point that you were like, nah, that's couldn't be?
Well, I think for me it was a couple issues, like the first issues that really started to become a nuisance were the contradictions in the Bible. The second issue, I think, for me was the poor manuscript evidence, especially for the Old Testament. The Old Testament manuscripts are a bit of a train wreck. And then I think the third issue were like some of the theological contradictions between the Old Testament and the New Testament. Like if you read what God says in the Old Testament, it simply does not mesh with the New Testament. And but I think the last thing, like the straw that broke the camel's back for me, was really doing in-depth studying on all the prophecies that the New Testament claims Jesus fulfilled. Because if you just go back and read all the prophecies in the proper context, it actually becomes quite clear that he didn't fulfill a single prophecy.
Okay.
Like zero, not even one.
Well, I can't really fully get into that as I would like to, but the the only other thing as well about the way that I would consider it as the Old Testament is like bonus points, and the New Testament is like meant to be the new thing we're meant to pick up. But again,
Yeah,
that's
but the Old Testament is quite literally the plumb line. It's the foundation, right? If
there
you don't
you
have,
go too.
if you don't know your foundation, how are you going to be building a house on top of it?
That's true. That's true now. That's true. See, we'd be sitting running in circles here, like, but sure. I say there's other people looking. They probably have good points, but that's the Holy Spirit. That's probably the only solid thing that I've ever came across. That, but again, as you say, feelings. It's not solid evidence, but again, thanks for having me up anyway, and
Sure.
I appreciate it.
Hey, it was good talking to you, KD. Have a great one.
You too, man. All the best.
Cheers. I mean, the guy sounded like we're probably related. You guys know how red my beard grows in.
Yeah, I was just
Uh,
about to say that, but he was nice.
I didn't want to derail the conversation, but I was like, hey, bro, what's your last name? Because I think we're probably related. How you doing, Blitz?
Hey, how you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for asking.
Yeah. So, all right. So you want like proof without using the Bible, or
You can try using the Bible. I just don't think that the Bible is. You got a long road ahead of you to demonstrate that the Bible proves Christianity to be true.
okay? So what about? Have you ever heard about the children of the Garabandal story?
That's actually a new one for me. Tell me about it.
You've never heard of that?
No, it sounds like something I haven't heard of.
Yeah, that's a story about four. I think it was four little girls. I think it was in 1960. They had visions of the Virgin Mary and Jesus.
Oh, I know what you're talking about
Yeah.
the Guadalupe visions, right?
No, Guadalupe is another one, but
Oh,
this one is different. This one's
Garabandal. Okay, so that's
Garabandal.
it's the four children: Ignacio, Emmanuel, Maria, and Juan Carlos and Gabriel. Oh, sorry, Ignacio, Manuel, Maria Lourdes, Juan Carlos, and Gabriel. Okay, so there was four people, four children that witnessed a Marian apparition.
Yeah. So all right. So in that one, they witnessed it um, for like 4 years straight, and the whole
Yeah.
village. They have plenty of witnesses. I mean, they did miracles. They said that basically they the angel Michael and Gabriel came and introduced the Virgin Mary with Jesus, the baby Jesus, in her
Mm-hmm.
hands while she was speaking to them.
Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
also did miracles with the host. They made a host appear on the people's tongues. And these are eyewitness accounts. So that's one thing I want. I mean, I just wanted to ask you about that. That was
Yeah,
one.
I would
Now that's
classify that. I would classify that again as group hallucination. The same way we have groups of people that claim to have seen Bigfoot or that claim to have seen UFOs or aliens. Group hallucinations are pretty common, and in fact, you've got also group psychosis, right? So, for example, in France in the 1500s, you had the dancing plague, where 400 people believed that they got the plague of being forced to dance, so much so that a handful of them died from dancing themselves to exhaustion.
Okay, I get that, but this is actually talking about Jesus and Mary. I mean, I guess we're talking about Christianity.
Right, that's
So,
what I'm saying, though, is
you
group
think that?
hallucinations are somewhat common in history.
All right, so the 4 years, okay, the four girls that, these four girls, they were doing some supernatural stuff while they were speaking to the Virgin Mary. Also, I kind of looked at a film on it it wasn't like a reenactment or anything. It was the actual film, and they were like levitating off the ground. They couldn't move them. And a whole lot of people seen this day by day. They had over 2,000 uh, sightings of this. So it's just like I don't think it was a mass. I can see what you're saying about it being one mass sighting or maybe two. But this was like every day, and they gave them. She was talking about things that are happening in the world and messages she needed to pass on. And strictly about.
Yeah. So my experience with Marian or Catholic apparitions is that they almost always seem to be a little bit suspect. They almost always happen to be with children. They're almost always very poorly documented. So I went to Catholic school for 12 years. The amount of Catholic apparition stories that I've heard is pretty unbelievable. But every time I looked into them, they always seemed to fall apart. So after a while, I just stopped looking into them because if you've seen enough of them fall apart, you're kind of like, what's even the point?
Right. So I mean, how would this one? This one, I don't think this one will fall apart.
I think it
But
would
what about? Okay,
if I went to go see what was actually published about it, I would probably find lots of stuff. So people have visions related to their religious upbringings all the time. It happens in the Hindu faith. It happens in the Muslim faith. It happens all the time. It's just a feature of people that are religious.
Okay, so you've heard about the other children of Fatima?
I know about Fatima. Yeah. Again,
Okay,
that's why I said
so
almost all of the Marian apparitions are like with children. They're poorly documented, and when you look at the documentation that's available, it's usually not good documentation.
so you don't believe any of them. So you think that it's all fake.
I don't know if they're fake. I think a lot of times people just attribute something, like they're seeing some sort of a phenomenon, like lights in the sky, like we saw recently down south. They're taking something weird, like lights in the sky, and then they're just imagining their religious convictions over top of it.
So who's making like the whole at one of those places like I guess the Fatima one, there was thousands of people out there to see this see Mary told them to be there at a certain time and it was going to be a miracle in the sky. I mean, how could you fake that?
Yeah, what was the
You
miracle?
got the miracle is like
Well,
a miracle of the sun. The
yeah,
sun
what specifically happened with the sun?
the sun is supposed to have danced in the sky and everybody seen it and they it rain it was raining or something like that and all the rain disappeared or something like that but
Yeah,
everybody
what
had the
happens when
same.
what happens when you stare at the sun too long?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying, this we talking about thousands of people though. I
I
don't think
know. I'm
thousands of
asking
people
you
are going.
what happened when you stare at the sun too long?
I don't stare at the sun.
You
So
get dizzy and you go half blind. So clearly, whatever was happening at Fatima was not anything special. I would think if God was going to manifest himself on Earth somehow, he wouldn't do it through mass hallucination. He would probably just appear in a way that is concrete and documentable, as opposed to doing it in a method that is nearly completely unable to be properly documented.
so you think that's not documentable? That's not.
I've seen the documentation for the Fatima apparition, and I've never found it to be very compelling. I didn't find the crying statue of Mary to be compelling, or the bleeding statue of Jesus to be compelling,
Okay.
or the incorruptible saints. All of these are like super explainable, and it just happens to be that Catholics are like really susceptible to these types of like apparitions and conditions. Like they expect them to happen, which is why you see them more with Catholics than any other Christian denomination. You've never seen this happen with a group of Baptists.
Okay. What about the Gara? So you what about the Guadalupe?
Yeah, I would say the same thing with Guadalupe. All of these apparitions are
Is it
typically
live?
something, all of the apparitions are typically something that is easily explainable just by looking at the natural phenomenon happening and not putting your religion over top of it.
Okay, I would just you're saying prove that Christianity is true. These are all like stuff about Jesus Christ and Mary. So I
Well,
was just saying,
if anything,
it wasn't
if
like it was
anything,
Justin,
Bigfoot.
my
if
love.
anything, it would only prove that people are willing to see women floating around in clouds. What's up, Hanji?
So Gigawatts is in here. I was wondering, can we make him a moderator because his polls are mwah,
Yeah,
and
let's.
we could go for some good polls.
Yeah, we can do that for sure.
Okay, I'll
Gigawatts,
continue, boys.
throw a comment out into the comment section so we can mod you up. I assume I've got room in my moderators to add one more.
I think so. But continue, gentlemen. I'm sorry.
But yeah, on the last thing, have you ever you heard of the Bible code?
I'm quite familiar with Bible codes. Yeah, this is actually
Okay,
the weakest piece of evidence that you're going to present today.
so you think that's a weak? Why would you say that was weak?
Yeah, it's in fact not just weak, it's the worst level of evidence you're ever going to present. And the reason why is because for Bible codes to work, it presumes that the manuscripts that the codes are being taken from all match each other, but they actually don't. So typically, Bible codes are most often done with Hebrew. I don't know why they always do it in Hebrew instead of Greek, but if you compare the Hebrew manuscripts with each other, for every sentence in the Hebrew Bible, I can find 10 different variants. So if you're going to say that the Hebrew Old Testament contains codes, you would have to first select, well, which is the actual authoritative collection of manuscripts that we're starting from, because they just don't agree with each other.
So the Torah, the Hebrew Torah is, what do you mean by it doesn't agree with each other?
They don't agree with each other. If you compare like the Aleppo Codex or the Leningrad Codex and you put it next to any of the Dead Sea Scrolls, or if you compare it to the Samaritan Pentateuch, you'll find literally thousands upon thousands of differences. And the way Bible codes work is you need the exact same words in the exact same order in all the exact same chapters and verses for Bible codes to actually work. So if you've got no agreement among the manuscripts, then there's no way for Bible codes to be developed within the biblical tradition.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I guess you debunked me.
Sorry, hey, I had a good time talking to you, Blitz.
All right, man.
Cheers.
My love, before you bring up the next person, let me go ahead because Gigawatts' comments are drowning. I'm gonna bring him
I
up for a
haven't seen
second.
any
So
comments from Gigawatts.
hold on.
Can somebody pin
Gigawatts,
Gigawatts? Oh, here he is.
no, baby. There we go. Wink. Okay.
Okay. Let me see if we can mod up Gigawatts
Sorry.
here. We're going to add Gigawatts as a mod. All right, Gigawatts, you're added. You've got power and authority here now. You can make
Praise
and
be
break.
the polls.
That's right. You can make and break people's dreams now. So W Giga, Steven, how you doing?
Hello, hi, I'm fine. I'm sorry you're not going to be able to argue with me. You'll probably drop me soon. I was a Christian for 40 years, and I went through discovering that I was basically lied to, and now I just see it as a very silly story, and it's
Yeah.
really quite ridiculous. God
Well,
offers
I
a
agree, but
sacrifice
it
of
turns
himself
out
to himself
that God must be
to appease
true
himself.
and you're a prophet because you predicted I was going to drop you and I just did. If you agree with me, there's no point in joining. We're looking for debates only. Join if you disagree, but I would
That was
say
more of a prophecy fulfilled than Jesus himself.
I've now fulfilled more prophecies than Jesus. How you doing, Ayaka? Well, she got up and then she muted right away. I don't know if she knows she's muted.
Hello,
Mm.
sir.
Jason, thank you so much.
I'm so sorry, sir. Yeah, um, I am, I'm actually, not, I
Thank you,
don't speak
Casey.
English,
Good to see you, Casey.
that much,
Wait, so
but
are
I
you a
just,
Christian?
oh yes, sir. I am a devout Catholic, sir.
Sure, yeah.
Yes,
Do
sir.
do you have
And,
evidence that the Christian God is real?
um, if I would have to ask, sir, before I continue, so that I would know if we are on the same page. um you guys here, you sir, are you an atheist, sir?
Yeah.
I see, I see. Well, um, I'd like to propose, sir, if I may, if I'd be allowed, because the question of God existence, right, will always be philosophical. The question about God existence, or if God is true, is an ontological question. When we go to Christianity,
It's not.
Islam, and all that, it's epistemological, right? Who is this God, right?
All right, so the question is the Christian God true? Now, what you can do through philosophy is you could try to find something that you call a necessary being, and you can just call it
Uh-huh.
God. And that's what's called philosophizing God into existence. But that is not
Right.
in any way evidence that God exists.
Well, I totally agree with you on that. Well, my evidence, if I may present this, right? In the book of in the Bible, it says that there is a chapter in the Bible. Can I read this verse, sir?
I would love for you to read the Bible.
Thank you so much, sir. It says here, who has
What are you reading?
believed?
You're reading
Sorry.
Isaiah 53, verse 1.
Oh, yes, sir. Who has believed our message, and to whom has the arm of the Lord have been revealed? He grew up before him like a tender shoot, and like
Yeah,
a root
so
of
your
dry ground.
contention here is that Isaiah 53 is about Jesus, I assume.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sure. And why do you think that?
Because in verse 3, it says here, he was despised and rejected by mankind, a man of suffering and familiar with pain, like one
Yeah.
from whom people hide their faces. And if we're going to go to verse 4 and 5, surely he took up our pain and bore our suffering, yet we considered him punished by God, stricken by him and afflicted, but he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed. Clearly, in these two verses, they are prophesying what will happen to the
Well,
Son of
actually,
God.
none of that was a prophecy.
How did you say so, sir? So who are they? Who is Isaiah speaking about in these verses then? If
Is
not
a
for
is
Jesus.
a single. Thank you, Ellis, for the helmet. Is a single word that you read talking about the future or talking about the past?
It's talking about the future. If
No.
Isaiah was talking about the
All right,
past,
so this is where we have to have a discussion about how verb tenses work. Are you aware that when you talk about something in the future, it has a different verb tense than when you talk about something in the past?
That I totally understand. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
so there's a couple things happening in Isaiah 52 and 53 because they're connected, and that is God delivering his servant, which is the nation of Israel, from their captivity in Babylon. And then the captives, I'm sorry, the captors, the ones who abused Israel while they were in captivity, are going to recognize that they
Right.
abused God's holy servant, the nation of Israel. And the servant, it is listed in Second Isaiah about 8 or 9 different times leading up to Isaiah 53. So you don't really have to like guess who the servant is, because Isaiah just tells you who the servant is. In Isaiah 41:8 through 9, he says, "But you, Israel, my servant Jacob, whom I have chosen, the offspring of Abraham, my friend, you who I took from the ends of the earth and called from its furthest corners, saying to you that you are my servant, and I have chosen you and not cast you off." And then Isaiah 43:10, "You are my witnesses, says the Lord, and my servant, whom I have chosen." And he says in Isaiah 44:1 through 2, "Hear now, O Jacob, my servant, and Israel, whom I have chosen." Then 44:21, "Remember these things, O Jacob and Israel. You are my servant. I formed you as my servant." Isaiah 45:4, "For the sake of my servant Jacob and Israel, my chosen, I call you by name." I can go on and on. And if you read the beginning of Isaiah 53, it says, "He grew up before him like a young plant, like a root out of dry ground." Well, God tells you in Isaiah 60:21 that Israel is the shoot out of dry ground. He says in Isaiah 60:21, "Your people will be righteous and they will possess the land forever. They are the shoot that I planted and the work of my hands, that I might be glorified." So God is firmly establishing the nation of Israel to his glory. This is not about a Messiah. There's no Messiah mentioned here at all.
Yes, sir. Thank you for pointing that out. The chapters that you mentioned, like chapter 44, chapter 43, I totally agree with you. They are talking about a specific or a certain person, but
They're not.
50, mhm, 53.
They're talking about the nation of Israel, just like
Mhm.
Isaiah 53 is.
Yeah. Chapter 53, though, is too far from the chapters that you've mentioned. And if we're going
It's
to,
not.
uh-huh.
Chapter
Uh,
53 is part of a build. If you read chapters 40 to 55, you've got a connected literary unit. It's referred to by scholars as Second Isaiah, and it
mhm.
talks about how God is going to rescue his people who have been abused in bondage in the Babylonian captivity. And then when he rescues his people, all of the nations that abused Israel are going to mourn because of what they have done to Israel. In fact, he says in Isaiah 55, he says, "The nations that don't even know you will run to you because the Lord your God, the Holy One of Israel, has glorified you." So the message of Second Isaiah is not about a messianic figure coming. The message of Second Isaiah is about God vindicating his people, the people that he calls himself his servant.
Right, sir. If we're going to go down to verse 11 and 12, he is specifically talking about a single person here. After he
Well,
has
he's not.
suffered, he will see the light of life and be satisfied. By his knowledge, my righteous servant will justify many, and he will bear
I
their
know.
iniquities.
I
Therefore,
know.
I will give him a portion among the great,
I
and his
know
reward
that.
equals.
Do you know?
Mhm.
Do you know
But,
how?
but,
Do you know how metaphors work? When God says, "You are my servant" in the singular, and the whole 53 chapter, the whole chapter is about a metaphor of Israel being personified as a servant. Obviously, it's going to refer to the singular servant as a he or an it. It also says in verse 12, "Therefore I will allot him a portion with the great, and he will divide the spoils with the strong." Jesus divided no spoils of war, none. And it also says in verse 10 that he will see his offspring and have his days prolonged. That's the promise of restoration to Israel that you find throughout the Old Testament. Jesus didn't have any offspring. Jesus didn't have his days prolonged. Jesus had his days cut short.
But Israel did not bore the sin of many and made
They
intercession for the transgressors,
they
as
actually
was
did.
mentioned in the
They
verse
they
12.
they actually did. If you bother to read all of Isaiah, God specifically says that I am giving you as a covenant to the people, a light to the nations. And the reason why this is happening is because they are going to see through your rescue and your glorification that I am the one true God. That's why he literally says in Isaiah 55, I will make with you an everlasting, after the restoration, I will make with you an everlasting covenant, my steadfast and sure love for David. And then he goes on, he says, the nations that do not know you will run to you because the Lord your God, the Holy One of Israel, has glorified you.
And which chapter is that, sir?
It's Isaiah 55.
It's Isaiah 55, chapter
Yeah.
55, right?
Yeah,
We're
I
talking
I
about
would
53
I
though,
would
sir.
I would encourage you to read chapter 40 to 55 because there's a theme
Mhm.
that runs all through second Isaiah, and that theme is that God is going to rescue Israel. He's going to bear his mighty arm before the sight of the people. Yahweh is God.
That I understand, sir. But if we're going to chapter 55, it says here, you mentioned that about God, um I mean, revealing this to Isaiah because it happened already. Am I right?
What I'm saying is in chapter 53, a lot of it is in past tense because if you read it
Uh-huh.
in context, it's speaking from the eyes of the nation. And you know this
Uh-huh.
because in Isaiah 52:10, it says, the Lord has bared his holy arm before the eyes of all the nations, and all the ends of the earth will see the salvation of our God.
Uh-huh.
And then immediately after that, you have God telling them to leave Babylon, leave their captivity, flee from Babylon. You're now being rescued. And then he says, see, my servant will prosper. He will be exalted and lifted up. He will be very high. So he's saying he's going to exalt and prosper the nation of Israel now that he is vindicating them. But if you keep going, you find something really interesting. At the very end of 52, he says, about the nations, that which had not been told to them they will see, and that which they had not heard they will contemplate. The very next sentence, Isaiah 53:1, is a report after the vindication of Israel by the nations. It says, who has believed our report, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? Well, that's not a rhetorical question. God said in Isaiah 52:10 that the arm of the Lord has been revealed to the nations. That's something he says was going to happen at least 10 other times prior to this particular verse. So God is not unsure about who the arm of the Lord is being revealed to. It's being revealed to the nations. And it's being
Right.
revealed to the nations through the rescue of his people from Babylon, through the only Mashiach that shows up in 2nd Isaiah, which is King Cyrus. King Cyrus is the only person that is listed as a Mashiach in 2nd Isaiah. So we know that Isaiah 53 is a report of the nations, basically detailing what they had witnessed and the guilt that is now laid upon them for what they have done to God's chosen people.
So this chapter 53 was correct me if I'm wrong, sir. Are they in captivity by Babylon at the time of writing by Isaiah?
Yeah, so they're at the time of 2nd Isaiah, they're right at
No,
the
I mean
edge.
chapter 53. Chapter 53, when Isaiah was writing this, are they in captivity by Babylon?
That's why I'm telling you, all of 2nd Isaiah was
Mhm.
written just before they were released from captivity, just before it. We
Just
know this
before.
because 2nd Isaiah mentions King Cyrus a number of times, and King Cyrus had not existed. He didn't even come to rule as a king until just a couple years before Israel was delivered. So I think it was like five. What year did King Cyrus become king, guys? Was it like, I don't know, 542, 5, something like that? Anyways, King Cyrus was only in power for a couple years before he steamrolled his way westward. So if the author here knew what King Cyrus was up to at the time of writing, then obviously he was writing while King Cyrus was in power.
Okay. So, um, this chapter 53, if we're going to go back 15 minutes ago, as what you've mentioned, this is a record of what happened already. But now you're telling me that this record was not a prophecy, but a record of what happened already. But what you mentioned is that
All right, so
they're not in
let me
captivity.
let me help you understand what I mean by that. In 53, it's a
Uh-huh.
personification of what the nations are going to say when Israel is delivered. Does that make sense? Just like in Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 28, God instructs the prophet to write down a taunt for the king of Babylon and for the king of Tyre. He says, take up this taunt when these kingdoms fall, right? So you see something similar in Isaiah 53. It's a report from the nations. This is what they're going to say when God delivers his people and glorifies them.
So this is a report for another nation or for Israel?
It's a
I'm getting
report.
confused here.
It's a report of the other nations of what they have done, right? It says, who has believed our report, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? So the sentence just prior to that, the very last verse of Isaiah 52 sets it out. It says, for that which had not been told to them, they will see, and that which they had not heard, they will contemplate. And then the very next line starts the chapter where those nations are in fact contemplating the things that they have now witnessed.
Okay, let me just go back to what you mentioned 15 minutes ago, sir. So this is a report. If I'm going to follow your narrative, this is a report of what's, I'm not sure, had happened or currently happening as Isaiah is writing chapter 53. But then again, you said that this is a report by
Thank you, Kim.
another nation.
Yes, it's a
That
it's
doesn't make sense though.
it does make sense. I'll try to explain it again.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So what Isaiah is doing is he is personifying the nations as to what he is expecting is going to happen, or he's actually prophesying what's going to happen when Israel is vindicated by God. He says, those nations who had not heard, because remember, they're not Israelites. They have not heard the prophecies of God, right? So it says, those who had not been told, they will see, and those who have not heard, they will contemplate. And then he says, the next verse is literally how they are going to contemplate. This is how they're going to contemplate. Who has believed our report, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? And just like I said, God says over and over again in 2nd Isaiah that he's revealing his arm to the nations.
So you're telling me right now that Isaiah is speaking for another nation's feelings
Isaiah is personifying the nations that have abused Israel in this passage.
in this passage.
Yes.
Being him as an Israelite, he
Which
is writing for their feelings. That
y-
makes sense to you, sir.
that's exactly what he's doing. Just like in Isaiah 14, when he takes a taunt against the king of Babylon, it was something that hadn't happened yet, but God said, do this in the future. This is what I want you to tell them in the future. And if you actually read it, it's all in the past tense. So there's nothing wrong. If you read all of Isaiah, there's nothing out of character for Isaiah. Isaiah personifies people all the time in the text.
Right, I understand. But
See,
you're
what I'm
okay.
feeling here is that you've read Isaiah 53, but you haven't read the rest of Isaiah, and so you don't actually have the proper context to understand what's happening in chapter 53.
But you're telling me right now that he's personified. Isaiah is personifying Israelites' enemies,
No,
and which
yeah,
doesn't make sense
he
to me though,
is.
sir.
He absolutely is. Yes.
So the evil spirit of his enemy came into him inside him and they're writing
I
and
don't
Isaiah is
know. I
writing
don't know
for
how
them.
difficult this is for you. I'm not saying that the evil spirit of the nations have come upon Israel or Isaiah. I'm saying Isaiah is saying when the Lord vindicates his people from Babylon,
Uh-huh.
this is the report. This is how the nations are going to be repentant because of what they did. And if you read the rest of Isaiah, God says over and over again that God is going to make the nations repent when they see the vindication of Israel. That's why he says of Israel that you will be a light to the nations.
Well, according to chapter 2, verse 12 here, though, he bore the sin of many. So,
I know.
mhm.
So
So Israel
we
bore
already
the
talked
sin of Babylon?
so we already talked about verse 12. I guess we'll just talk about verse
Yeah,
12 again. Let me get
right.
down to the
Uh,
verse 12.
yeah.
So it
In verse
says,
12, he says,
"Therefore
for
I
the Lord.
will keep hold on. Therefore I will allot him a portion with the great, and he will divide spoil with the strong." Did Jesus divide any war spoil?
He will in coming in judgment day.
But did he?
He will in judgment day, sir.
I didn't ask you what you think he'll do in the future. I asked you what he already did.
He will do in the future,
Okay,
sir.
so Jesus didn't fulfill verse 12.
Will fulfill
So
in judgment day, sir.
well, when you say he will do it, that means he didn't do it, right?
He is
Because
about to
I
fulfill
can
it,
easily
sir.
just say that my cat will do it in the future, right? So the minute you tell me that the prophecy is going to be fulfilled in the future, you're just admitting that he didn't fulfill it.
Can I answer it, sir? Can you give me 2 minutes?
Because you need to.
Like a minute or two without me being interrupted, because it's really hard for me to compose a sentence because English is not my first language. But I would just like to inform you, sir, that when God is speaking, He is of course speaking in past tense, because in God's eyes it already happened, right? In our eyes it has not happened yet, because we're not an infinite being. But in God's eyes, it already happened. So if you're asking me, did it happen in our time frame? No, of course not. It hasn't happened yet. But in God's time frame, He is an infinite being. It happened already, sir.
Well, that's adorable, but it didn't happen in reality.
In your time frame, in our time frame as a
It,
human being, it has not happened yet. But
yeah,
in
but
that God's time frame, it already happened, sir.
yeah. But if verse 12 is about Jesus, then in reality, it just hasn't happened yet. That's how prophecies
Which
work.
reality are we talking about? Our reality or
Well,
God's reality,
well,
sir? Because
apparently my reality, because you don't live in the real reality. You have created a fictional reality that you live in. Because in my reality, verse 12 hasn't been fulfilled yet.
in human sense, yes, sir. But in God's time frame, it already happened. As I mentioned, He is an infinite
But
being.
did it happen in reality?
In our realm, in our reality,
Okay.
it has not happened yet, sir. But again, as I've mentioned,
in
God is speaking
our
here.
reality, that is where time is ticking. That's
You,
where
you
we're
you have to
on.
also you have to also
That's where we're on
uh-huh.
the timeline. Okay,
You
so
also, you also have to accept,
if it
sir.
didn't happen on our timeline, that means it didn't happen yet.
The person or the being who is speaking to Isaiah and wrote this is speaking in his time frame, sir. So for you to put this word and apply your time frame in this will not make logical sense, because
Yeah, it
again,
does.
God is an infinite being and He is speaking in past tense because it
He's actually
already
not.
happened in His time frame.
See that's what you're saying is it's in past tense, but it's actually not. And see, this is where the interpretation of it being about the nation of Israel is the interpretation that actually makes sense, because most of chapter 53 is in the past tense. The part of 53 that is in the past tense are all the parts where it talks about Israel being abused. The parts that are in the future tense are the parts that match the prophecies in the rest of Isaiah about the people of Israel being vindicated. Because 53, according to the timeline laid out by the prophet, is at the time of the exile being ended by King Cyrus. It's when they're finally being released from captivity, which means the abuse is now in the past, but their glorification has not yet occurred. So you see the future tense beginning to get used in verse 12, where it says, because they have suffered, because they have done this thing, therefore I will allot him a portion with the great, and he will divide the spoils with the strong. That coincides perfectly what we read in the rest of Isaiah, where God says, I will restore your fortunes, and kings of other nations will bring you their gold and silver.
Right, sir.
You
And
see how different Isaiah 53 reads when you include the rest of Isaiah and you don't just read it in isolation? That's
um,
Isaiah 48 says, "The kings will see and stand up. Princes, they will lay prostrate, because the Lord who is faithful, the Holy One of Israel, has chosen you." The vision of second Isaiah is God glorifying his people, not glorifying Jesus.
and he is writing this as what you mentioned after their exile in Babylon.
No, everything in second Isaiah was written just before the exile. Some of it is written as a personification of future people. I don't know how this is so difficult.
Because you mentioned that he is writing in behalf of this the enemy
Okay, so
nation
all
of
right, so
Israel.
let me just make it really easy for you. Let's make up a fictional character. Our fictional character is going to be Brian. Okay. Now,
Uh-huh.
I'm going to make a future prophecy about Brian. I'm going to say in 10 days, I'm going to punch Brian in the nose. And then after I punch him in the nose, he's going to say, "Why did you punch me? That hurt." Do you see how part of that was in the future tense and part of that was in the past tense? And I was able to personify Brian's words, even though Brian didn't exist yet.
So he is
Thank you, Kat.
speaking. This is a prophecy for the Israel's enemy nation. Is that what you're saying, sir?
Yeah, for the fifth time, this is the prophet Isaiah personifying the people who have abused Israel, the same people who God is revealing his mighty arm to, the same people who are going to see the glorified Israel and come to recognize that the God of Israel is the one true God.
Okay, so if I'm not mistaken, the captivity has not yet happened here.
The captivity had been underway for 64 years already.
When you say underway, what do you mean by that, sir? Are they already in captivity or?
Yes, the captivity had been ongoing for 6 decades already. They were supposed to last 70 years. It only lasted about 64 years. The time that Isaiah is writing is just before the release of the captives, not at the beginning of the captivity.
Uh-huh. So after the release, sir, right?
Listen, I don't think you fully understand what's happening in any of Isaiah. I mean, do you want to read all of Second Isaiah and then come back and try again?
Sir, because I want to understand what your viewpoint earlier when you said
Right, but
that
I've explained it 5 times and you don't really actually get it.
because it doesn't make sense. You mentioned
What
first
doesn't make
that
sense to you? Chat, put a 1 in the comments if it makes sense to you that Isaiah is capable of personifying a people group in the future as to what they might say when they witness God vindicating his people.
he's writing for them for their enemy.
That's literally what I've told you 5 times.
Yes. And that makes sense to you.
It makes 100% sense because that's literally what he's doing.
Writing for the enemy.
He's not writing for the enemy. He's personifying the enemy
The
when
feelings of the
God
enemy.
he's personifying the report of the enemies when they witness God revealing his mighty arm. Thank you, Sweetney. I appreciate that. All of second Isaiah is about God revealing his mighty arm to the nations. This is not a difficult concept.
Okay, let me just explain to you what you have, and I'm gonna go down already, sir. Let me just explain to you what I have in mind as I understood it. You mentioned earlier that when I brought up this chapter to you, you mentioned that this is just a record.
Thank you,
This is
Solo.
just a record
A
of what
report.
already happened. Yeah, a record of what already happened. Now you're changing your statement, and
I'm
you
not
said
changing
he
my
is
statement. You don't understand
personifying.
what I'm saying.
You said
Clear.
he is
All
personifying a
right, so
future for
so
the
I'm
enemy.
just gonna say it one more time for you. So what's
Mhm.
happening in Isaiah 53 is Isaiah is personifying a people group in the future, and he's speaking for that people group. And because that people
In the
group
future.
are talking about things witnessed in the past, they're
Uh-huh.
talking in past tense. It's not
So he
difficult.
is personifying the enemy in the future when in fact 20 minutes earlier you mentioned that he is just recording something that already happened. Very,
You
very,
weren't
very well
listening,
said,
so
sir.
I'll just say it again. The people
Yes, sir.
speaking in Isaiah 53 are speaking about past events. The reason why they're speaking about past events is because from their vantage point, the events happened in the past. But it's not actually their report. This is a report that Isaiah is personifying that the nations will give when they witness what the Lord says they're going to witness.
So so what you're saying is that he is personifying a future enemy, right? And he's speaking for them, and at the same time, he is recording what happened in the past and making it as an example for what will happen, and he is personifying the future enemy.
Yes, he's personifying what's going to happen with the Lord's enemies in the future. Yes.
And at the same time recording what happened in the past.
Yes, because in the chronology of the chapter, when they give the report, the contents of their report is in the past.
Mm-hmm. So he is using who he's using what happened in the past and recording it and
No,
personifying. Okay.
he's using what's going to happen in the future, and he's personifying a future people group after the events have transpired, which is why when they're talking about it, they're talking about it in the past.
And did it happen, sir?
Kind of, not so much. They were released from Babylon. They were allowed to go back to their homeland. They rebuilt their land. They got part of their glorification back, but then they got steamrolled by the Greeks. In fact, the promise of Isaiah 54 never came true after the captives were let free, because God says, "This will be like the days of Noah to me, just as I swore the waters of Noah would never again go over the earth. So I have sworn that I will not be angry with you, and I will not rebuke you." So God promises in quite a few of the Old Testament prophets that after the Babylonian captivity, their sins will be paid in full because they have
Right.
received double for their punishment. That's Isaiah 40 verse 1. God says, "You've received double punishment for your sins." And
Mm-hmm.
and because of this, after the Babylonian captivity, finally God's no longer going to be mad at you.
Thank you, sir. I just want to summarize what you just said. So somehow the prophecy that was mentioned in chapter 53, even though I do not agree with that narrative that you mentioned, somehow you mentioned that some of it came true in actuality. So isn't it that you're proving that what God revealed to Isaiah is somehow true, sir? You're proving God's existence now?
No, because
Thank
if you
you.
were because if
I'll
you're
go down now. Thank you, sir. Praise the Lord.
so you don't want to actually hear my answer, you just wanted to run.
Alrighty.
Yeah, so if you were alive at the time of second Isaiah, it was the most obvious thing in the world that King Cyrus was going to march into Babylon and take it over, because Babylon had already fallen under a Median military commander. A Median military commander had already kind of walked into Babylon and took in control over it, because the previous king Nabonidus was AWOL for 10 years, and the city of Babylon was basically without a leader. So the Medes and then the Persians just walked right into Babylon, nearly unopposed, and just took it over. And at that time, they were the most powerful army on the earth. It would be like me predicting, like if we went to war with Mexico, that America is going to win the war. It's literally the easiest prediction a person could ever make.
Not that hard. I mean, I'll give her credit for being nice, but she really wasn't trying to listen. Either that or she doesn't understand the book that she's reading yet.
No,
Skits!
Skits, welcome in. Good to see you.
We're going.
How you doing, Benny?
So y'all are still? I was just listening on what y'all was getting at. So I'm confused. Are you saying that 53 was talking about a nation and not a person? Isaiah chapter 53.
Yeah. So we just spent the last 45 minutes talking about Isaiah 53, maybe an hour. All right, so I'll make you the same deal that I make with everybody on my live, because I can't do Isaiah 53 for all 6 hours of my live.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you can name one prophecy that Jesus fulfilled, I'll gladly go over all of Isaiah 53 a second time with you.
To take on.
That's not again.
Are
If
you
you
saying
can,
anything other than that?
yeah, if you can find anything other than Isaiah 53 that Jesus fulfilled, I'll spend another hour going over it with you, just like I did with the last guest.
And we don't have to, because I was just listening on that part, and I want to comment on that part because I was reading the rest of 53. But you know why I'm on here. I'm on here for something that y'all were talking about yesterday. I don't remember.
Actually, what were we talking about yesterday?
Yeah. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I want to say it had something to do with saving the virgins for yourself.
Oh yeah, Numbers 31.
Numbers 31. Let me
Yeah,
see.
what's your contention with Numbers 31?
Because if I'm not mistaken, that was with Moses.
What about it?
And I'm if I'm not mistaken, he was doing that to Pharaoh,
No, the Midianites.
the Midianites.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna have to go. I'm trying to pull up. Do you remember exactly? It was Numbers. Do you remember exactly which chapter and verse we were
Yeah,
talking?
Numbers 31.
Numbers 31. Give me a second here. That's the one I wanted to talk about.
I mean,
I'm noticing that there's 526 souls in here.
Oh, Hanji, what happened?
I'm sorry, I had a message. I see 532 people in here and only 57 likes. Let's go ahead and tap this screen. Let's see if we can get host to 150 likes. It is still early in the night. If you have time to chat, you have time to tap, babies. Come on, let's go. Let's push him into the algorithm, please.
Yeah, and thank you so much for being here, guys. I really appreciate all the likes and the support and the shares and the gifts. It really means the world to me that we have such a supportive group here. Thank you, Dev. Thank you, Nathaniel. All right, so Beanie, I mean, what's your complaint with Numbers 31? What I assume that you've got some justification for why it was a good thing to capture these virgins.
Yeah. So for the reason that he was saying it was because he specified exactly why he allowed them to do that, and it was because they called the Israelites to sin against him.
Who
So
did?
that was their punishment for causing the Israelites to sin against them.
Who did?
The Midianites.
Who specifically? Do you remember the incident at Baal Peor?
I don't know if he specified.
It's in the book of Numbers as well.
I'm trying.
It's also, so if you look at the incident that they had, basically there were a number of women who enticed some of the Israelite men to sleep with them and to worship Baal.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so basically God punished an entire people group because some of their women were disobedient, and then he said to unalive all the men and then all the little boys and all the women who were not virgins, but you can keep the little virgin girls for yourself. So, and you think that's okay?
And when he say keep them for yourself, not to just do what you please. What else? Because he said something else. That's where I want. That's the part where I was at.
Are you not aware that God thinks it's totally cool to take captive brides in war?
Well, he also said the ones who pretty much you don't want to deal with, let them go.
No,
Set them free.
Oh, you're talking about Deuteronomy 21. He's saying, yeah, if you take a captive bride and you marry her, you take her as your captive bride, and then later you become displeased with her, you can let her go free. You won't sell her as a slave.
Yeah. So we was in Deuteronomy, right?
Well, we were in Numbers. I don't know. Do you want to go to Numbers or Deuteronomy?
I think we were in Deuteronomy.
So the reason why I brought up Deuteronomy is because it's completely within God's commandments to keep the virgins of war for yourselves, to make them your captive brides. That's not like something in question. We got 2 chapters in Deuteronomy that explicitly say you can do it.
And so the reason for that being, again, because as we were saying yesterday, we understand how prized being a virgin was.
Yeah,
So,
I know
so
because the God of the Old Testament was just like man. He had a tiny Johnson and was so insecure that he could only tolerate virgins.
no, see, he didn't say sleep with them though. He said
He doesn't.
take them.
Well, he
He
doesn't
said
have
take them.
to. That's
Meaning
what it
that
mean. That's
if
what it means. That's what it means to take something for yourself. It becomes yours. There's
yeah,
a
so
there's
now
a
they are
there's a
now they are
possession.
part of.
There's a possession.
Mm-hmm.
When it's yours, that means you've possessed it.
Yeah. So now you have ownership over them. Yeah, you can
That's
adopt
right.
them to your tribe. Yes,
Well, it doesn't
but
say
not
adopt them, does
necessarily.
it?
I mean, but sometimes you have to. That's where you have to put context with
Does
context.
it does it say adopt them?
It doesn't say sleep with them either, though.
Okay, can you find me one passage in the Old Testament where God commands his people to adopt little virgin girls?
He didn't say sleep with them either, though. He said take them for yourselves. Meaning,
Yeah.
meaning that you can either put them to work, you can use them.
Oh, so it's okay if you make them slaves.
From the people that you got them from. Yes.
Okay, so fantastic. So why does it matter if they're virgins?
If you want to take them to wife, if you want them to be your wife, if you
That's what I just said. You're
Yes.
telling me that they couldn't sleep with them. Now you're telling me that they could be your wife. Okay,
No,
so the fact of the matter
so-
was
see, now, wait.
they
Before you
took the
flip
little
that
virgin
like that,
girls.
before you
They
flip that
took
like that,
they took the little virgin girls because they were little virgin girls and they wanted to make them war brides.
And if they wanted slaves, why are they only focused on the virgin girls, but unalive the little boys, unalive the men, and the wives who knew men? You do know what that means, right?
Yeah.
Context, need context.
So they literally could have enslaved anybody, but they didn't enslave them. They unalived them by the sword.
that was God's punishment for that,
For the little boys.
whatever the case may be.
So first of all, the men didn't do anything wrong. The Midianite men didn't do anything wrong. It was the Midianite women that caused the Israelites to sin. Second, the little boys, the little boy children didn't do anything wrong, and God said to unalive them too. So God says to literally unalive everybody, including the parties that are not guilty, but you can keep the little virgin girls for yourself. Now, you can try to get around that by saying the text doesn't mean what it actually says. But the fact of the matter is, we've got other chapters in the Bible where God said it's okay to take war brides. So if God's okay with them taking war brides, there's absolutely no reason why you need to interpret Numbers 31, 17, and 18 about anything other than war brides.
The important part is why virgins were okay to take. Because they were virgins.
Because they
were considered. Let me finish.
Because they weren't
Can I
defiled.
finish? Can I finish?
We all know why. It's because they weren't defiled yet.
They were clean. They're considered.
That's right.
Clean in God's
Yeah,
eyes.
That's right. You could put your pee-pee in them.
If you marry them,
I know, and that's what they were doing with
So
the
he's saying-
with the
so what he's
captive
saying-
war brides.
so what he is saying is, I don't want anybody who have committed sin.
Okay, do
We're
you
gonna-
think
we're
that the
gonna
little
wash
boy
away- we're
do
gonna
you
wash away-
do you
so
think
we're
that the
gonna
little
wash away-
boys do you think that the little boys were impure?
They were made from sin. So
Do you think
technically,
that
yes.
do you think that the little boys were impure?
Yes, they were made from
Why?
sin. They were made from
The little
sin.
girls were too.
Yes, but
As it turns out, little boys and little boys and little girls have the same birthing process, and according to the Old Testament, if you birth a girl, the time of impurity is twice as long. Little
But-
boys, you had a time of impurity that was only 7 days. For little girls, it was 14 days.
are women necessary for the continuation of human race?
And so are
So
men,
that
as it
is
turns
why.
out.
That is
And,
why.
yeah, and so are men, as it turns out.
But there's enough men over there where they don't. At this point, we don't need more men. Let's take. the
What do you
women.
mean we don't need more men? Are you assuming that
Let's
that all
take the girls. Are you serious right now?
Let's
This guy's-
take the virgins
this
because
guy's-
they are deemed clean.
You are
Yes.
the biggest fucking walking red flag I
Whoa.
have ever witnessed on this app. I'm
I mean,
sorry,
if that's what
Justin,
you
but
call
that
it. So
that
Careful!
is
Don't
disgusting.
get me banned. Don't get me banned. All right, Benny. Let's just look at the facts. The facts of the matter are, at this point, you've now changed your opinion and you're agreeing with me that God says you can take these women and you can turn them into war brides, right?
Yes, but he didn't say you
Uh,
have to.
I didn't say he has to, but you're allowed to. Like if I said you're allowed to rob the liquor store, I'm not saying you have to, but I'm saying you're allowed to. Well, that's not cool. Saying you're allowed to do something is just as bad as saying to do it.
So now, if he said, "I give you this liquor store, you can do what you please to do with it," meaning if you want to keep it running, you can, but you can't necessarily do no wrong there because it belongs to you. So you can't rob that liquor store because it's your liquor store. If you're robbing it, then you're robbing from yourself. So at
Yeah,
that point, he. So at that point, he's
that's
not
a
saying.
really sad cope.
So at
Because
this point, he's not.
what God is okay with is for you to kidnap little virgin girls and make them your bride.
You're not kidnapping them.
Would you be okay if the Israelis right now went into Gaza and kidnapped all the little virgin girls and took them?
You're calling it kidnap. I call it
No, it's
adopt.
kidnapping.
I mean, if that's how you
When
want.
you go and you take somebody else's child, that is by definition kidnapping.
You're adopting because guess
You're
what?
not adopting, you're kidnapping.
You don't
So
have to. You
okay,
don't
so
have to
so
keep
next
them.
time I read in the news that a child was kidnapped, I'll just say, "Well, it wasn't that bad. They were just adopting a child." I've heard it all. Kidnapping children is now the newest form of adoption, y'all. You don't have to have health insurance. You don't have to have a job. You don't have to have money. You can just go kidnap children because kidnapping and adoption are the same damn thing.
So what was going on in that? It was a war. Of course, we understand that.
Yeah, and who
washed
was
away he
who was
washed
the
away-
aggressor?
He washed away majority of the tribe.
Who was the aggressor?
So I guess what you would call
Who was the
captive-
aggressor?
Who was the aggressor?
Yeah,
God was the aggressor.
Israel.
Yeah, God told him.
Israel. Okay, so Israel attacked a people group and unalived countless innocent people, countless innocent children, and then took captive countless innocent little girls. And you think that's okay because you're okay with a God that's a barbarian.
I don't think that's okay.
If
but
it's
that's
not okay,
but
then
that's not-
why are you defending it?
It's not up for me to judge. God has His reasons for doing
If it's
things.
not okay,
I
then
wanna
why
know
are
this-
you defending it?
But I want to know the
If it's not okay, why are you defending it?
I want to go exactly to that scripture because I want to know exactly where
Benny,
it was at.
if it is not okay, then why are you defending it?
Because I don't have the right to judge. I'm not God.
See, this is where you guys go into like heavy coping mode. You presuppose that your God exists, and then you presuppose that since your God must exist, because you already presupposed he exists, that you can't question that God. What I'm doing is I'm starting from the baseline. I'm reading about that God. I'm saying, hey, does this God even make sense? And if the God doesn't make sense, I'm not inclined to believe that the God exists. And when I read about this God, I'm not inclined to believe in a God that is all loving, all good, knows all things, and is all powerful, but has to resort to countless innocent lives being executed and then having to kidnap little virgin girls to make war brides. A God that is all good, all powerful, and knows the end from the very beginning could easily institute something better so that the innocent do not need to suffer and only the unrighteous will be punished.
He's already stated. So so let's use me for an example, right?
Justin, I have an app update, baby. I'm gonna drop, update it, and then come back because half the screen is black. It's really weird.
I know, TikTok being TikTok again. All right, Benny, so tell me again how it's okay to kidnap little girls.
Let's go back to what you were saying. So let's use me for an example, right? If I did something, whatever the case may be, or I was known to be away, and my kids after that, you can look at them and you can be like, oh, this is their
Benny,
dad.
you got kids?
I don't have kids.
Okay, just checking, because if you did, I'm calling CPS.
I got kids. I got dogs. I call them my kids.
Actually, I get that. Pets are basically they're not the same as human kids, but I get you. They're the next closest thing.
But okay, let's use my dad for an example, right? My dad was crazy. My dad was known for walking around, slapping people, whatever the case may be. Now, if my dad was like actively present in my life from childhood and he pretty much instilled his morals in me, you would assume that I would be the same person. So pretty much what God told people, whatever you do will, or pretty much discipline will be afflicted upon your kids and for generations to come. So that is why when he punished one person, he punished their kids also, because he already
Oh,
stated that.
uh-huh. Yeah, I know about it. It says he'll visit the iniquity of the father onto the children into the third and the fourth
So,
generation. And
so that's why,
do you
quote
think that
unquote,
do you think that's justice? Thank you, Sherry, for the bracelet.
I think it's just, and and so to
Okay,
understand the
so
kids, so the kids is not the is
okay, so if I commit a crime, do you think it's just for my son to go to prison for me?
no, because
Why?
that's actual punishment. To understand how God operates, though, right? Before a certain age,
So before you get to preaching, let me just
go
make it
ahead, talk
very
to me, bro.
clear. You just said that it would not be just for my son to pay for my crimes.
Correct.
So why is it just for God to punish children for the crimes of the parents, even into the third and fourth generation?
Because what we may see as punishment might not be punishment. So that's
It
why I'm about to
is.
get. So let me get into this.
Yeah,
So to understand,
it is
and I
punishment.
think, and this might have been you I had to talk with. Before a certain age, your sins are not counted against you.
Where's that in the
So
Bible?
what do you mean?
I mean, you said it, but that's certainly a claim citation needed.
I don't know exactly what verse. I'll find it. I can find it for you. That'll take a minute. Or if I go to my phone, you wouldn't be able to hear me though.
I know. So there's no
But
age.
you can type
There's
in Google, where does it say
I
that?
know there's no age of accountability in the Bible. Thank you, Ghost
Yeah, I
Talker,
mean,
for
yeah,
the
there's not a
helmet.
certain age,
So
but
there is an age at which children are not expected to know right from wrong,
exactly.
and we see that in a couple different passages. But if you actually read the Bible from cover to cover, you'll recognize that you don't actually choose to go to heaven or hell. God predetermined that from the very beginning who is going to go to heaven and hell. So whether or not you were of the age of accountability or not, God already knew where you were going to end up.
I'll say he knows the path that you're going to choose, but again, now that's where the Old Testament, when I know you don't believe in the rapture or whatever case happening, but all of that is going to have something to do with
Thank you, Jay.
restoring
Appreciate it.
souls and leading people. So just because it looks like a person is going that way or headed that way does not necessarily mean that they will go that way. So God knows, but we never know where that person is going.
God doesn't just know; He predestines.
Yeah. And and we can even use Pharaoh for an example, right? We know the type of man that Pharaoh was. We understand what God did to him to prove who he was, right? But that doesn't mean that Pharaoh is going to hell. Only God knows where Pharaoh is going from
In
that point.
fact, if you read Romans chapter 9, Paul seems to indicate that Pharaoh was specifically designed to go to hell.
Did it say hell?
Yeah, destined for destruction.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean hell. That just means destruction on earth. Did he not get destroyed?
Well, that's literally the second death, right? So
What?
God says, well, Paul says for God, right, in Romans chapter 9. Maybe we should just read it.
Agape Mo, people are saying in chat, you mind changing your shirt so we can see the chat better?
Oh, sorry. Here's the thing, guys. I'll try to get some black t-shirts. I've got 2 tops in my wardrobe. If it's cold, I'm wearing a hoodie. If it's not cold, I'm wearing a white t-shirt. Literally my entire wardrobe. But I will get some black t-shirts just for
Listen,
the
black
chat.
goes with everything.
Yeah. So, anyways, Paul says, oh, shit, I just knocked out my earpiece. Thank you, Gabs. Paul says in Romans 9 that it depends not on human will or exertion, but on God who shows mercy. And he says later, what if God, desiring to show his wrath, to make known his power and endure with much patience the objects of wrath that are made for destruction? And what if he has done so in order to make known his riches of glory for the objects of mercy? So he creates some people as objects of mercy and some people as objects of wrath.
Yeah, but I think he's referring to like here on earth. That doesn't necessarily mean that they'll go to hell, because on earth he used them for wrath. That's just his way of showing that he's God.
Well, you could reinterpret that as objects of wrath for here on the earth. But if God deemed you as being an object of wrath here on the earth, then obviously you're not somebody that is going to make it into heaven.
No, that's not what that says.
Why would God take his wrath out on innocent people that are going to go to heaven?
The people weren't innocent.
Okay, so if they're not innocent and God is taking out his wrath upon them in a justified manner, then obviously those are people that wouldn't be in the kingdom of heaven. They're not going to partake in the resurrection of the righteous.
No, because now you're saying that your actions is what gets you into heaven or hell.
I didn't say that at all. Although
So
the Bible does say that.
it says that in the Old Testament.
Well, actually, it doesn't say that in the Old Testament. It kind of alludes to it in the Old Testament, but Jesus himself does say it if you read Matthew 25. In fact, Jesus himself says that, when he comes back, he's going to judge people based on their deeds. So, and that's what I would expect from somebody who was a just judger. I wouldn't expect to find Jeffrey Dahmer in heaven merely because he converted in prison to Christianity.
Well, see, but he has forgiveness. So your deeds are the deed that God asks you to do is love your neighbor and love no other God, and also to accept Jesus Christ as your Savior.
Well, yeah, the deed that you're quoting from is Leviticus 19:18, which, interestingly enough, only 6 chapters later, God says that you can make slaves. So, I mean, obviously, loving your neighbor is a little bit fuzzy. If you can love your neighbor and you can also make foreigners permanent slaves.
So did Jesus not also refer to his, I guess, servants? Are them not slaves?
Who are Jesus' servants?
The 12 disciples.
No, those aren't considered servants. They're just
I mean, them is
disciples.
disciples, but I guess
Disciples can be, they can leave. They're not there by force.
But I guess all of us would be Jesus' servants, though. We're here to serve him.
Well, you can make yourself voluntary. Ghost Talker, thank you for the subscription. You can voluntarily make yourself a servant of Christ, but that's not the same as slavery. Thank you, screen name that I can't read, for extending your subscription.
Now, although we do see acts of slavery that we know today as slavery, and this is where...
All right, so we already made the apology for kidnapping virgins. Let's make the apology for slavery.
I mean, you could call it. I mean, yeah. So slavery, yes, we did. We see acts. Yes, he did say you can take as your slaves, right? But also, this is where we have to understand what Jesus did when he came on earth as well.
Did Jesus ever say to free your slaves?
No.
Did anybody in the New Testament ever say to free your slaves?
In the New Testament?
Yep.
No.
Okay, so God, when he lays down his laws, says that you can own slaves, and then never again ever changes that rule. He never comes back and says, no, now you can't own slaves, or you're allowed to own slaves temporarily. Thank you, Rusty, for the Knight's helmet. Yeah, so God is okay with slavery. If he wasn't, he would have just said so.
Yeah, but he asks them to pretty much do as your master says. But
Yeah.
for my sake, though, not for the sake of them, but because I asked you to, and for that you will inherit a great reward.
Yeah.
So pretty much what he's saying.
If you're a
is,
slave and you're being treated harshly, just to endure it for my sake.
no, I mean, for the time being, and I will avenge your mistreatment.
Well, he didn't say that.
Well, he didn't say that, but he also said
He didn't say anything close to that.
he said whoever does wrong will be afflicted upon them.
Yeah, but that's not in reference to slavery. That's actually not really what he said either, actually.
Because I was literally just looking at this.
Yeah, he does talk about people who are bad people being punished eventually in the afterlife.
I'm talking about literally in that same text where he said, and I want to say it's Colossians, my bad. I want to say it was in Colossians 3, quiet.
Colossians 3:25.
Yes, 20. I want to say it started at 2022, maybe, where he began to.
Yeah, it says, slaves, obey your earthly masters in everything, not with a slavery performed merely for looks to please people, but wholeheartedly fearing the Lord. Whatever task you must do, work as if your soul depends on it. For as for the Lord, not for humans, since you know that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You serve the Lord Christ. For the wrongdoer will be paid back whatever wrong has been done, and there is no partiality. Yeah, actually, I think you interpreted that correctly. I'll take the L on that one.
Yeah. So to understand the picture that Jesus painted for us, it was for he showed us how to
Yeah,
not
but
only be served, but how to serve. Because
yeah,
knowing how powerful Jesus
but
is, not only do you get
you're
a
actually not addressing the topic.
yeah. So I'm explaining slavery.
So what you're addressing right now is when Paul is writing to the Christian people who are currently slaves. I'm talking about when the Bible talks to the Jews and to the Christians, says you can own slaves. That's the problem. See, I don't have a problem with Jesus saying, hey, if you're a slave, be a good slave because you'll get rewarded in the end. You know, God's going to sort things out eventually.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about when God says, hey, by the way, you can own slaves.
Yeah, so and that's where I'm thinking, like, and this is where my interpretation of understanding everything that took place afterwards. I think that us as humans, we misunderstood what he meant by own slaves. Yeah, he did say you can beat them. Yeah, he said you can do this, but
Okay, so owning a person and beating them is not having a slave.
no, it is. It's having a slave,
So what's the difference between that and slavery?
and that was just around that time. I guess. I mean, around that time, I don't know.
So
exactly
slavery is
why.
only good sometimes.
Nah, it's not necessarily just good sometimes, but he calls. So the people who were to own slaves were his people.
I know
He chose certain
God is
people.
okay with his people owning other people as slaves. As long as you're part of God's like in group, you can own slaves.
So for those who don't believe in him, what are the wages of sin?
The wages of sin is death.
Okay, so people who don't believe in him is technically a sin. Don't worship any other god before me. That's a
Okay,
sin,
cool.
right?
So it was totally okay for the Americans to enslave the Africans because they were pagans and the wages of sin is death. And so why not allow God's people to enslave them?
But see, this was after
After what?
after Jesus came and showed us what it looked like
Thank you,
to
biblical.
be a proper, I guess, slave master.
Did Jesus ever say not to own slaves?
No, he didn't, but he showed.
Okay.
He paved the way to show people how
Okay,
to be served.
and that's exactly what they said in the South. Listen, I'm not mistreating my slaves. Why should I have my slaves taken away? As long as you're not mistreating your slaves, slavery's okay, according to you.
But did he not? But did he not free us from slavery? You can say,
He didn't free anyone from slavery. He only saved the Israelites from bondage in Egypt.
well, I'm saying because you were referring to now. Are we slaves now?
No, we're definitely not slaves now. I'm not.
And if knowing who God is, that was according to His works.
I didn't get freed from slavery.
You weren't a slave.
Oh, there you go. Okay, so when did God say not to own slaves?
He
He never did.
You saying now or
Ever. He never did.
he didn't say it, but he made it happen.
No, he didn't.
He did.
Humans ended the slave trade,
So-
not God. In fact, God, according to the Bible, would have been perfectly okay with the slave trade. You can't just take something that happened in history and attribute it to God when God himself explicitly says that he is in opposition to it.
He's okay. He okay with slavery because he understood what was to come. He just wanted us to
Okay, so
trust his process enough to
are
understand
you,
that.
are you okay with slavery?
No, I'm not okay with slavery.
Why?
But we are still slaves.
Why?
Because I'm a human.
Yeah,
I'm not okay with it because
but according to your God, slavery is okay. So I'm asking you why you're not okay with it when your God is.
it was I would say it was appropriate at the time.
Okay, so slavery's good sometimes, but not all times.
At the time, if you understand,
Okay,
so
so
there wasn't really
at
a
what-
governing body
at-
the way that we have it now.
Well, first of all, that's a lie. There was, and second of all,
No,
when,
not the way that we have it though.
I never said that it was a democracy the way that we have it
Yeah, yeah,
today, but there was a governing body. It's called a theocracy at that time. So, at what point in time did it not be okay to own slaves, and how do we know?
Now that's a question I don't know. I can't.
Yeah,
give you
because
an
you're
answer.
capping. You're just making stuff up.
No, 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 no. I can't give you. I can't give you an answer to that one because that's just like basic morality. We understand that it's not okay now in the presence that we live in. Of course,
It was never okay.
to us it was never okay, but God's reasoning is not the same as ours.
Yeah, because God doesn't have a reason, because the God of the Old Testament was created by man to justify the horrible behavior of man.
I don't think so.
The
Because
God of
God,
the Old
but
Testament was
no,
made in
because
the
God did,
image of man and not the other way around.
and so that's the thing. God allowed the behavior, but He didn't necessarily agree with the behavior. He
He
allowed
says
people
you're
to
allowed
do.
to do it.
Yeah. So that's why I said He allowed it, but that doesn't mean He agrees with it.
Okay, so when did he ever disagree with it? Regina, thank you so much for the greeting card. I love it. You are the best. Yeah, so
That's
okay,
beautiful.
so you're making a claim that at some point God disagreed with slavery. Can you show me in the Bible where that's true?
No, He doesn't necessarily say it because again,
Okay, so that's just something you're making up about God then.
He allowed His people to prosper, and
I
so if
know,
they,
by owning slaves.
yeah,
Yeah,
but because of their beliefs,
and he never said that you couldn't own slaves. So you
He
can't tell me
didn't.
that God was against slavery when he clearly wasn't.
He no, but also to understand who God was and how His people, or the reasoning for doing it, is because other people didn't believe in Him.
Which is exactly what I said earlier. As long as we're enslaving the non-believers, it's okay.
I mean, I guess, but yeah. So that,
Oh, did you? You're not
but
supposed
all,
to. You're not supposed to say yes to
He's
that.
not
Come on,
serious.
Benny.
it's yes, and it's yes
Benny
because
has now gave the whole justification that the South gave for
Oh
enslaving the
God.
Africans.
well, see, the South,
Congratulations, you have
Oh my
just
God.
but
embarrassed your ancestors.
no, they weren't God people though.
Oh.
I know they weren't, and that was the excuse that we used for enslaving them. We're taking the heathens from Africa who are destined from hell, and we're making them slaves here. We're going to convert them to Christianity. Thank you for the crown, Ghost Walker. And so even though it looks terrible, it's actually better for them in the long run. That's the justification that was used over and over again.
But in the long run, did it not turn out to be better?
It didn't, because it was all a lie, and the biblical God is fiction, and slavery is abhorrent, and you should reject the God that was okay with slavery and rape and kidnapping little girls and genocide. You should reject that God.
And that's where I disagree.
I know you are totally okay with a God who likes genocide and rape and kidnapping and things like that. You're okay with that God. I'm not okay with that
Yeah,
God.
I could never
But
be. No.
but
It's
there,
okay
but
if you want to worship that kind of a God, that's fine. Just know that you're a walking red flag and you're a danger to humanity.
he
And
did
you
that
really
because
need to stay away from children and
he
women.
yeah, okay, you're just taking it to another level, but okay. I'm not even talking to you. I'm talking to, I guess, your husband.
You can talk
First
to
of all,
Hanji and you will not disrespect her. I'll just
But she
drop you.
disrespected me.
She didn't
Respect goes both
disrespect you.
ways.
She
Yes, she did.
spoke.
She told me to stay
You
away
just
from
can't
children
you
and not
can't
know me.
handle women speaking.
No, she don't know me to tell me to stay away from kids.
She don't
It's
need to
trying to
know
point
you.
that I'm a pedophile or whatever.
She's saying the obvious.
That's not the obvious. You
She's
don't
saying
know
what
me.
everyone's
But
thinking.
no, she's saying what she's thinking.
All
But
right,
when
so Benny, what else in the Old Testament that's horrible would you like to justify? You just want to go over all of it?
I think everything that he did was justified for the people that he did it to.
Do you think that little girls or young women should be stoned on their wedding night if they're not virgins?
Yes, because you're forgetting the wages of sin back then was death.
Listen
So
to what he
yeah,
said. You should stone girls for not being virgins on their wedding night. That's a good command.
the wages of
That's a
sin
good
was
command.
death.
Okay. Should you stone somebody for breaking the Sabbath?
Is that not a sin?
bye.
Damn.
Bye bye.
Is that not a sin?
Regina.
Bye.
Well, Regina's had enough. W Regina.
Ooh,
W
but she.
Regina.
Yes or no? Is that a sin?
Win Zeus. Win Zeus.
Unfortunately,
Win Regina.
unfortunately, Zeus was sent to him, so he actually
Did
profited from that.
did Regina legit just send a Zeus to the guest?
Yeah, like I
Oh
don't
boy.
think she meant to.
Sorry, Regina. That didn't turn out the way you wanted, but we appreciate it. We
Yeah, he's gone
appreciate it
either way.
anyways.
He's gone
He's
either way.
gone. Oh, let's see. It's May 8th. All right.
Yes.
So let me write this down. You got Zeused. That means you're done for 30 days. You're out of here,
Trust me, if it
son.
was up to me, it would be a fucking year for that.
You
motherfucker.
can come back and justify your red flag god in 30 days. I'll be more than happy to talk to you until then. So W Regina in the chat. So at that, let's get our next guest up in here.
Sorry, Gigi, you did send it to that despicable human being. So in technicality, he kind of profited from that. But it's okay. It's okay.
Let me get
We
Bash
needed
up in
him
here
gone.
too. I didn't see Bash sneak into the queue. I suspected he wanted to have a word with that last guest. Bash, what's in your mind?
Hey, how you
Hey,
doing? I just
Bash.
wanted to ask him, and from here on out, when I hear men speak this way, I just want to know if they are ready to take the ultimate command of God, delete us, meet us. Will you chop it off for Jesus if he commands? And that's New Testament, not even Old Testament. Will you chop it for the kingdom, delete us, meet us for eternal life?
You know they won't.
But he okay with dropping off the kids and the SMEC slaves.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to.
I mean, Bash, look at how he was talking to me just because I'm a woman with a voice.
Yeah, like but if it's really real, it's not real. As a matter of fact, from here on out, I don't think I respect a Christian man who has an intact penis. That may be too far to go.
You can't.
I don't know if I can though. Yeah.
I'm with it.
I feel like you got to chop it off to really prove that you love him.
You got to snip it.
Snip
you gotta
it.
Snip it.
Huh?
Right off.
You got to chisel the missile. You got to.
That's right. That's right.
That's all I wanted to ask. I'm out of the way, man. Have a good one.
Hey, thanks. Good to see you,
Love you,
Sab.
Bash.
Always good to see you.
I wish I had brought back. Well, he would have got He would have got Zeus anyways. But I wish I had gotten a Bash up in here in time. I didn't see him in the queue.
Link's also subscribed to you, by the way, Agape Mo. It's just she subscribed as soon as Zeus was sent.
Oh snap! Thank you for the subby. I really appreciate that. Jason, welcome in.
Thanks, man. Oh man, this is my first live. I don't even know what to say.
Well, I mean, you picked a busy one to have your first. So what's in your mind?
I've just been in the closet for the last hour dealing with a tornado here in Middle Tennessee. But I don't know, man.
I mean, you requested to be here, so surely there's something you would like to present.
He was crying in the comments to let him up, let him talk to you, and now all of a sudden he has nothing to say. Interesting.
And I don't know where he's gone. Now he's gone. So it's always the people that are loudest in the comments that
Wasting our time.
A lion in the comments, a lamb in the box every time.
Go back to your shepherd boy.
He's in the prayer closet. Yeah.
Prayer closet, oh no.
I think I can't remember. I think this might be a friendly. We'll see. Guys, I think we might have ran out of Christians to talk to. Let's tap the screen and share the live. Let's try to make sure that we can get some boost from the algorithm. I can only assume that like 99% of the people here are followers. And we just don't have any Christians, or they're just all terrified to get in the box. That could happen as well. How you doing, Exposing? Hello?
Oh, hey there.
He got a bad connection.
Yeah, hey there. You hear me? What can I do? Give me 1 second. Let me try to plug this phone in.
Well, you're not a Christian, are you? I'm trying to remember.
Can you hear me? I'm trying to remember. Is it better?
Well, it's echoing now.
Okay. Yeah, I'm an atheist.
Well, it's echoing now.
Damn it.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you being here, but we got to echo, and we're just looking for debates. But we appreciate you for supporting. Okay.
It's better now. I think it's better now. Hello.
It is better.
We're only talking to opposition. Only join the box if you are opposition, guys.
How you doing, Diggs?
What's up, buddy?
Are you a Christian?
Yes, sir.
Cool. All right. Do you have proof that Christianity is true?
Well, you got scientists that use the Bible to find archaeological discoveries in lost locations.
Sure. Can you name one?
Sure. You got Sodom and Gomorrah where they found sulfur. You got the rock.
Can you Can you name the scientist that did that?
No.
I know you can't. Can you actually tell me where Sodom and Gomorrah is on a map?
No, I can't.
No, of course not. Okay. Well, neither can any of the archaeologists. Nobody actually knows where Sodom and Gomorrah is. They can only guess. Most people think that it's southeast of the Dead Sea, but there's no remnants of ancient cities there. As it turns out, there's lots of sulfur around the Dead Sea. Do you know why sulfur is proliferating around the Dead Sea?
What do you mean by proliferating?
It exists in large quantities.
Like what? Like in like, is it like rocks? What was it like? Is it like sand? What does sulfur look like?
Sulfur is basically mineralized crystal that is the byproduct of bacteria feeding on salt deposits. So the reason why there's a bunch of sulfur around the Dead Sea is because there's a lot of natural salt deposits, and they have the appropriate weather conditions to create sulfur.
I got you.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to argue with you or anything. I'm a respectful person. So
No, you're definitely respectful.
yes, sir. The last guy, when he was talking about like the slaves, so when God commanded us to have slaves, he commanded his people to have slaves. Okay.
Well, I mean, that's who the laws were given to.
All right. So Christians, me for instance, if I hypothetically speaking, if God told me to go have slaves, guess what I would do? I'd go get them, and then I'd give them the perfect life.
I think what you should do is just
they wouldn't even be a slave
not.
at that point. They'd be servants.
Yeah,
And
I think.
servants
you
get paid.
Yeah. Okay. So you wouldn't take slaves. You would take servants.
Well, I'd take slaves and turn them into servants and pay
Well,
them.
slaves are by definition not servants.
Yeah, but that's why God gave us authority over slaves so we can give them good lives.
Right, but by definition, slaves are not servants. So if you went and you took servants, you are not actually taking slaves. You're just taking servants.
Yeah, but if I take a slave and make them a servant
That's just called emancipation.
by giving them a job,
Yeah, that's called emancipation. When you free somebody from slavery, that's called emancipation.
so I guess that's kind of the understanding of why God allowed that.
Okay, so are you suggesting that God only allowed them to take slaves so that they would emancipate them?
That's what I would do. I can't really speak for, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because that's Christian.
Well, let's read Leviticus 25 real quick. It says, "As for the male and female slaves who you may have, it is from the nations around you that you may acquire male and female slaves. You may also acquire them from among the aliens residing with you and from their families who are with you, who have been born into your land, and they may be your property. You may keep them as a possession for your children after you, for them to inherit as property forever. These you may treat as slaves. However, as for your fellow Israelites, you will not rule over one another harshly." So sounds to me like the proper definition of slavery. You're just somebody's property for life, and they can beat you, they can treat you harshly. You just can't do that to your fellow Israelites.
Yeah, just like the Bible was written by man, correct?
I think all of it was written by man. I don't think any of it was written by God. In fact, I just think it was mankind's attempt at creating religion to fulfill a economic and political goal.
So what do you say about people that die and go to heaven and come back, and they have these stories?
NDEs, I don't say much about them because we've never been able to validate any NDEs scientifically, and all of them tend to disagree with each other. For example, you've got Hindu people who have NDEs that see the Hindu gods. Thank you, Crispin Chunky. You've also got Muslim people who encounter the prophet. You've got Christians, obviously, who encounter Jesus, and Catholics who encounter Mary. NDEs tend to typically fall in line with like the cultural expectation.
I got you. So like, for example, sorry, my phone was dying.
Mhm.
Can you hear me?
Mhm.
I hate when it does that. I don't forget what I was about to say. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
What?
Apple says that he is a troll, so he likes to and tends to waste time.
Oh, Jay Diggs?
Yes,
Mhm.
sir.
Well, he seems kind enough so far. I mean, I don't know. Did you have something else you'd like to go over?
No, I mean, if you don't, I can let somebody else come up if you want.
All right, yeah, I'll try to. I'm going to get somebody up here. We're just looking for some people who disagree.
I got you.
But I mean, you've been kind and respectful, so thanks for being here, man.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
All right, cheers. All right, we'll get the next one up in here. I see some friendlies, and I see maybe one Christian. I see it's Christians in the comments, but not in the guest queue. I can only assume you're scared. How you doing, Michael?
Yeah, Spoken Truth is crying like crazy.
Yeah, spoken. He definitely. Let's get some baby bottles in the chat for Spoken Truth. Michael, welcome in.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing good. Thanks for asking. Are you a Christian?
I am not.
Oh, okay. Well, we're just looking for Christians to debate right now, but we appreciate you being here.
Well, I can't answer the question though because I have been a Christian in my life.
I know. Most of us have been Christians. Guys, only get in the box if you're a Christian and you disagree. Looks like we're short on Christians. I'm going to use the bathroom real quick then. I'll take advantage of this opportunity. While I'm gone, if you could like and share as much as possible so that we can boost the algorithm and get some Christians in the box, that would be really helpful. And, we'll try to pump this thing up.
Yep. You guys heard the man. Let's go ahead and tap the screen, share it out with your friends, no matter their religious beliefs. See if we can push him back into the algorithm so we can go ahead and get more opposition. Be sure to like, and if you're not following and you like his content or the live, be sure to shoot him a follow. If you want to use our cute little emotes that us Kraken crew have going on, Kraken spam the chat with the Kraken emoji. It is $2.99 a month. You could do it once, or you can have it as a reoccurring payment. It is only $2.99 a month. Also, Host has a link tree where you can get connected to his other accounts in case this one goes down, or if you want to just send him some coffee money, or just to support him. Honestly, if it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't even be here. We wouldn't even be able to do these live streams. And thank you all so much for being here on this Wednesday with us when you guys could be doing anything else. You decide to come and hang out with us. Thank you all so much for the gifts. They're not necessary, but they are appreciative. And for the people that are not used to this live stream, if you cannot stand the guest any longer, it is a Zeus to kick. It doesn't matter if it goes to me or if it goes to host, but the Zeus, which my picture says, smite the guest, takes them out for 30 days. So from the calendar day of the day that a Zeus is sent, they cannot come back within those 30 days. And so no matter how problematic or how circular they are, if you really cannot stand it and you have the money to drop, by all means. And for those of you who are wondering how much he is a $350 gift. He is not 600. And in coins, as far as TikTok, it is 34,000. Thank you all so much for being here. We love each and every one of you. And Maiden, tiny, tiny. Rawr. Ooh, look at that bear.
All right, guys, we're back at it. I got 2 people in the guest queue. I don't know if they're friends or foes, but we're going to see real quick. The posterior Polish philosophy. I feel like I've talked to posterior before. I could be wrong. How you doing, posterior? Thank you for extending your subscription. I'm sorry the name is cut off. Carly, thank you so much for the crown. I appreciate that. What's on your mind, posterior? Hello?
Well, I don't guess anything necessarily. I see the title is "What Proof Do You Have for Christianity is True?" But I just kind of joined. I heard y'all talking about biblical slavery and stuff, and I know that is brought up a lot among atheists. Matt Dillahunty has even said it's his go-to argument, and I was just wondering, what is the reasoning for that?
Yeah, because most people pretty universally just kind of agree that slavery was a horror inflicted upon mankind. Whether you're Christian or not, it's just kind of a universally accepted point. So by bringing that point out, you're basically appealing to people's notion of right and wrong And most people have like this inherent notion that slavery is wrong. And so when you say, well, slavery is wrong to you, but look at what the Bible says. When you point that out, then it basically begins, hopefully, a process of deconstructing what you think about the Bible. I think our guest has got a bad connection because they're muted and they've only got 2
Yeah,
bars.
I keep. Can you hear me?
Yep.
He
Yeah,
has red
it's
bars.
this stupid pop-up screen keeps popping up, and I can't
Yeah.
get it to go back down. I'm kind of
Yeah.
getting familiar with TikTok.
Yeah, your connection's pretty poor too.
Let me see if I can fix it real quick.
Do 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 do. Do
Actually, I've
do 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 do. I saw that rhythm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, is that any better?
I can hear you right now.
Well, as far as you saying slavery is inherently wrong, I'm not
Thank
sure I would
you,
agree with
Andrew.
that.
Okay. Well, I didn't say that you said it was. I'm saying that most people would say that it is.
Well, I'm not even sure. I don't think most people would. I don't know if you know who Benjamin Skinner and Kevin Bales are, but both one's a reporter who studied modern slavery. Kevin Bales is a professor who has studied modern slavery, and they actually say that there's more slaves today than any time in human history.
Yeah.
It's just
But
it's just going
nobody's
under the radar.
yeah, but nobody is saying that that's a good thing, and that's kind of the difference, right? So when you say that modern slavery still exists, I'm sure it does, but I'm against that slavery as well.
Okay, now as far as the Bible is
Thank you,
concerned,
Vintage.
I see a specific distinction between the passages in the Bible concerning slavery, because there was this idea in the Bible that a man could actually get out of
Andrew.
this, that he could rise up at Joseph, who sold into slavery, became essentially the ruler over Egypt. Pharaoh just gave him everything, let him do it all. The Bible kind of teaches this idea that man can get out of slavery, but
No, it doesn't.
Aristotle, the Aristotelian idea of slavery,
Well, before you go to
doesn't teach
Aristotle,
that.
your first premise is just wrong. The Bible doesn't say that all slaves have the opportunity to rise up within the ranks and to not become slaves. In fact, it just mentions, that
Well,
the
I didn't say it
reason.
said that.
Well, that's kind of what you're alluding, unless I wasn't hearing you
I'm saying
correctly.
that,
But
yeah, according
Joseph,
to the Bible, yeah.
so Joseph just happened to have a slave owner that was good to him. But obviously, you're aware that there were bad slave owners too.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah. I mean, but there's this idea.
So it doesn't really
There's this
matter
idea in
if
the Bible.
but there's not a law, right? What you're saying is, well, we have the story of a couple slaves that were well treated, and therefore we're going to reinterpret this story to mean all slaves were well treated, and that just simply isn't true.
Seem to be pretty consistent in the ancient Near East,
I don't know
because
about
you have
that.
Joseph, you have
Eleazar.
Eliezer of Damascus, Eliezer of Damascus. You have
Mm-hmm.
Ruth, who actually wanted to be a servant, of course, same Hebrew word, and wanted to do this and was willing to, but
Yes, but you're
obviously
aware that
God brought them up.
servants and slaves are different.
Yeah, sure. But I'm wondering,
Okay, so I don't have a
from your
problem with people
perspective,
being
how do
servants.
you establish in the Bible what was considered a slave and what was considered a servant?
Easy. We can use the modern definition of slavery. Slavery is when somebody is owned as property. They don't have the freedom to leave. They don't get paid for their labor. And then, like, their children would be born into the position as well.
Okay, so they're on this property, and you're saying, does that exclude indentured servants?
That excludes indentured servants. That's a different classification. That's basically somebody who's working off debt typically.
Okay. Now, in Exodus 21, where it says, if a master strikes his slave and he dies as a direct result, he shall be avenged. If he doesn't, lives a few days, he shall not be avenged, since it's his money. Would you consider that an indentured servant or a chattel slave or a slave?
As far as I'm concerned, this is referring to either. Right, because if you're allowed to beat your indentured servant with a rod, then by logical extension, you'd be allowed to beat your slave.
Okay, so it seems like then just saying owning someone as property or something isn't really clear enough, because an indentured servant could fall under that category.
I didn't invoke Exodus 21. You did.
I know, but what you said was, when I asked you what a slave was, you said someone who is owned as property.
Yep.
But under Exodus 21, that very passage there is about actually Hebrew indentured servants.
I know, which is why I didn't invoke it. You did.
Yeah. So
I don't know why you keep bringing up
property.
But I don't know why
an indentured servant. So your definition doesn't work. If you're just talking about it.
Well, my definition does work,
then I'm saying
because
you need a better definition.
Well, my definition's perfect.
No, it wouldn't. Not under the biblical.
Okay, so just
No,
listen.
it's not.
Just listen.
Because then you have a problem.
You can't listen while you're talking. So I already told you that indentured servants are different than slaves, and I don't have a problem with indentured servitude, although I don't think you should necessarily need to beat them with a rod. My problem is when people are owned as property. Now, I didn't say anything about Exodus 21. You did. Now, when you go to the biblical definition of slavery, what you want to do is turn to Leviticus 25. In verses 44 through 46, God explains how you can own permanent chattel slaves. He says, as for the male and female slaves who you may have, it is from the nations around you that you may acquire male and female slaves. You may also acquire them from among the aliens residing with you and from their families that are with you who have been born into your land, and they may be your property. You may keep them as a possession for your children after you, for them to inherit as property forever. These you may treat as slaves, but your fellow Israelites you will not rule over each other harshly. So these people are selected for permanent chattel slavery.
Okay, now I understand, but
Thank you, Vintage, for the feathers.
When I ask you what the definition of slavery was,
and I gave it to you,
said owning someone as property. Yeah. And I said, does that include an indentured servant? And you said no,
it doesn't.
But under Exodus 21, it is viewed as his money. Do you consider that property or not?
Well, no, because the indentured servant, it literally says of the servant that it is the owner's kesef, which is the Hebrew word for silver, or typically it would be idiomatically used as money, because silver was the main currency, right? So what he's saying is, if you beat your slave so severely that he only survives for a day or two, he is unalive accidentally, basically, you won't be punished for it. Your life is not going to be avenged, because it's obviously not a intentional murder, right? You didn't intentionally unalive your slave. It was done accidentally. And the reason why it invokes the fact that it's related to the slave owner's money is because it's presumed that you would not want to unalive your slave through beating, because if you did so, you would lose out on the debt that they owe you, right? You would lose the investment. Right, so there's no presumption of guilt if it appears to be an accident.
Yeah, and just so we're clear, that you do not consider slavery, you just consider that indentured servitude.
No, what I'm saying is in Exodus 21, you're allowed to beat your male or female Hebrew servants and or slaves. It doesn't say anything about foreign slaves, but as I said before, by logical extension, if you're allowed to beat your indentured servants, then obviously you're allowed to beat your slaves. But there are slaves mentioned in Exodus 21, and those are the women, the little girls that are sold into slavery.
Okay, but I'm just trying to, just so we're clear, when you're considering that indentured servitude or slavery.
I'll just be very clear. Indentured servitude is when you're paying off a debt and you're only in service for 6 years. You go free in the 7th year. Slavery is when you are not
Okay.
paying off a debt. You don't get paid for your labor. You don't get the option of going free. You have no autonomy. And
Okay.
if you have children, your children are born into slavery.
So in Exodus 21, the beginning of Exodus 21, it talks about
Is there a
rules for
reason
your
why you just can't address
Hebrew.
Leviticus 25?
Well,
I don't know why
Probably
you.
agrees with it.
I don't know why you keep running to Exodus 21 when I'm clearly showing you in Leviticus 25 where there's chattel slavery. Are you just too afraid to address it?
From your definition. No, we can address that.
I'm not running
In
from my
Leviticus
definition.
25,
I clearly told
yeah,
you
your
there's
definition's inconsistent. That's what I'm
there's
saying.
two definitions. One is indentured servitude and one is actual slavery. I'm reading you the passage where actual slavery is the most clearly defined.
It's not that hard to comprehend. Seems like he's projecting.
He's coping pretty hard.
Okay, so what I was saying is your definition is so unclear. You're just saying slavery is owning someone as property. And I'm pointing out that in Exodus 21,
I didn't say that.
people view that as owning someone as property.
I didn't say that.
Atheists have brought that up as owning somebody as property.
I don't care
I
what
know you
other
do, but
atheists
I'm
have
saying
told
is
you.
people would consider that. Well, look, I'm saying that you're going to have to do better, make a better definition for slavery than just owning someone as property.
Okay, so I'll give you the definition again since you weren't listening. A slave is when you own somebody for life. They are not working off a debt. You are not paying them. They do not have the freedom to go, and their children are born into slavery. That is slavery. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, so that does not apply to Exodus 21. So now we can go to Leviticus 25.
Well, it does apply to Exodus 21, but only the females, not the males.
Interesting.
You didn't read all of
that,
Exodus 21.
Oh, yeah, I've actually read it probably a lot more than you have.
No, you haven't.
But
So Leviticus 25, I don't care what other atheists think. I'm just talking about what the Bible says. Don't cry.
Do you know
Stay
who
on
Dr.
task.
Josh Bowen is?
I know who Dr. Josh Bowen is, yes.
Do you know who Dr. Josh Bowen? Okay.
I know who Dr. Josh
you know
Bowen
that
is. He's an Assyriologist.
I don't know that you do. If
I
you
do.
Think that this is about. Okay.
I do know who Dr. Josh Bowen is. He
I've had
literally
multiple
wrote. He literally wrote.
conversations with him.
He literally wrote the book on biblical slavery.
I understand that.
He
I've actually had multiple conversations
He
with
runs
him.
Digital
Did you know-
Hammurabi. I know who he is.
Digital Hammurabi. Yeah. He's co-hosted. He's actually modded a couple of debates I've been in. Did you know that he considers Exodus 21 as a protection for women, believe it or not?
I don't believe so. I've actually heard him
And I'm
speak on it.
wondering.
So
Yeah,
I don't
I'll
know.
give
I
you
don't
this
know what
source.
secret.
Go to
I don't know
Bart
what.
Ehrman.
I don't know what secret conversation you've been having
give
with
you-
Josh Bowen.
No,
but how about
it's on YouTube.
so?
I'll give it to you right now.
Explain to me in Exodus 21 how it's protecting women. I'd like to know what's your take on it. How is Exodus 1 protecting women?
Well, because it does not. They cannot go out free afterwards.
And why is that?
Because the view is there's different schools of thought here. That if they were to go out free at this point,
They would
in
be
that
defiled.
situation, they would have been they would be susceptible to foreign nations it was trying to attack and oppress, and it was kind of a
No, they
way to
wouldn't.
protect them.
No, they
from
wouldn't.
that.
They would
Well,
go
look,
back to their
I'm-
families.
Well, look, if you want to say no, they wouldn't. I wouldn't. I'm just saying this is what some scholars will say. Now, if you go to Deuteronomy, in Deuteronomy, it actually makes it actually
So you're not going
in
to.
which-
I know.
which the woman-
I know Deuteronomy contradicts when Moses gives the law a second time. He contradicts Exodus. He does that a handful of times.
If you want to call that a contradiction,
It
sure,
is.
but scholars believe there's a progression as they're going into the promised land, as they're
No,
establishing themselves,
that's not what
there's
scholars
a
believe.
changing in the order because
That's not what scholars believe. Scholars
look,
believe that when Deuteronomy
okay,
was
well, look,
written during the time of Josiah, that the opinion within Israel on slavery had changed, which was over 1,000 years different,
okay,
if you even believe that Moses
okay.
existed, which most scholars don't. So
So they had a
according to the
so they had a different
according
view
to
that
the according
it
to the
changed, right?
according to the actual Bible, what is happening is Moses just creating a contradiction, because he's summarizing on the foot of Mount Sinai the previous laws that we're giving, and in his summary of laws he changes some of them, and that's one of them that gets changed.
Well, see, it also is that he's giving kind of a final, kind of a reminder. This is what happened. This is what you
I
need to do when
know.
you go into the promised land,
Yes, he was
etc., etc.
I
And that's
agree.
why
He
that's
was
why that's
he was
why
recounting what happened
okay. Then
previously.
there's no contradiction.
It is a
But
contradiction.
he's also adding this is what you're going to do when you go into the land, when you take this land that I promised to give you. So there's no contradiction if he's saying something about changing. And the problem with contradictions is it's very difficult for an atheist to prove a contradiction, because
It's not
if it's
difficult for
logically
me.
possible
It's
that
not
it's
difficult for
something
me.
else. Well, look, we'll just have to agree to disagree on that. I don't think you've proven a contradiction. But did you want to talk about Leviticus 25?
We haven't even talked about contradictions. In fact, we'll talk about that next. So let's talk about Leviticus 25, which is what I brought up that you've been running away from. So in Leviticus 25, God says you can own slaves of the nations around you. You can own them for life, and you can treat them harshly. Can you explain to me how that's not slavery?
Look, I don't have a problem saying that would be some form of slavery.
Okay, and do you think that that's good, that God commanded them to own slaves?
Yeah, I don't really have a problem with it.
Oh, there's your red flag, guys. We always say it. Red flag. Okay, so are you against the African slave trade?
Yes, I would be.
Why?
Because under the African slave trade, based on what I was told in history, and I'm going by what I was told in school, that the way it was established was you had Westerners coming over, buying these slaves from people who had kidnapped people, sold them into slavery, and then they took them to other countries and things of that nature. And, as a result of kidnapping or stealing them. That's what I've been told.
I'm sure you have been told that. Are you aware that most of the slaves
do you agree with that or not?
Most of the slaves during the African slave trade were basically victims of losing tribal feuds at the beginning, and they were basically sold off by other Africans. And then when it became really popular, then white people just came over and literally kidnapped people. So you've got a mixture. There's a couple methods at which people became slaves, just like in the Bible. See, in Leviticus 25, God never says don't own slaves from foreign nations. Only if they're captured in the appropriate way. He never gives them a regulation as to concerning themselves with how the slave became a slave. He just says, "Hey, you can go."
He does.
He doesn't.
Exodus 21:16.
Exodus 21:16.
Anyone kidnaps a man and sells him, and
Exodus
he that
21.
is found in possession of him shall be put to death.
Yeah, keep going. Okay,
You
so
know about that
Exodus.
passage?
I'm familiar with it. Exodus 21:16 is instructing his own people not to kidnap free people and make them slaves. That's instructions for the
now
Israelites.
where do you get that from?
Because that's what it says.
So are you saying that is there okay? No, it doesn't. Are you
That's
saying
what it says. Well,
okay
I'll
for
read it
them
for you
to
again. So
kidnap
in Exodus
another-
21:16,
read it for me.
he says, "Whoever kidnaps a person, whether that person has been sold or still held in possession, will be unalive." So you cannot kidnap a free person and sell them or do something with them. That is strictly forbidden. But he never says when you buy slaves of the foreign nations, make sure that they weren't kidnapped.
There you go. You just got through saying it says you cannot kidnap a free person. Those words are not found there. You're adding to it.
Okay. So if you kidnap a person, whether that person has been sold or is still held in possession, are you assuming that that person is free or a slave?
I'm assuming that that person was kidnapped, whether they were freed, whether they were a slave of someone else or whether they were free would be irrelevant. The fact is they were kidnapped by someone and made a slave by that person, which is forbidden and is punishable by death.
Yeah, so kidnapping somebody's own slave or kidnapping a free person and making them a slave is forbidden. But that's not what we're actually talking about. What we're talking about is when God tells his people that they can go and own slaves, he never once says that you need to make sure that these people that you're buying weren't kidnapped. Do you understand the difference?
Wouldn't it be reasonable to assume? No, actually, I think it would be reasonable for me to assume that if I know the Mosaic Law and I'm a Hebrew,
I don't think you actually do.
and I know that there's a passage in Exodus that says, if I kidnap someone and keep them or sell them as a slave, I shall be put to death. Then that would include whoever I come across.
No, it doesn't.
I don't just get to kidnap someone else's slave and make them my slave, because that too would be a violation of that passage.
It's almost like you don't listen to anything I say. I'm not saying that the Israelites were kidnapping people and making them slaves. I'm saying that Israelites were acquiring slaves from other nations, and not once did they likely question how that slave became a slave. And when God gave the laws in Leviticus 25, yeah, I know it's true. In Leviticus 25, if God wanted them to only buy slaves that he knew came into slavery appropriately, he would have just said so.
Well, see, here's the way I look at that. My assumption would be, because if you look at the rest of the chapter of Leviticus 25, it's dealing with debt, it's dealing with forgiveness of debt, accumulating debt and being sold, and things of this nature. So the assumption that I think is a safe assumption based on the context of the whole chapter is even these foreign slaves that you're purchasing most likely would have been in that situation because of some sort of debt that they accumulated or something of that nature.
Well, yeah, the problem
is,
so if
you're saying, oh no, they were kidnapped and then they bought them, it could be the case they were, but maybe that the Jewish person maybe bought him thinking that it was a debt type situation and not a kidnapping situation.
Yeah, but if it was a major concern
or
with
maybe
God,
they just didn't care.
They didn't care. If it was a concern for God or for the Israelites, there would have been a law stating that make sure when you buy a slave, ensure that they are properly slaves, because we have in other ancient Near Eastern law codes rules that are laid out for making sure that slaves actually had papers. In fact, if you read ancient Near Eastern texts related to the Old Testament by James Pritchard, you will find that slave contracts were actually quite valuable. And that was the method by which you could determine if somebody was legitimately a slave. But God doesn't concern himself with that with the foreigners.
I think that would actually support my point. Because if it's the case this was common.
So I don't think it would. And let me explain to you why. Because, again, there's about 7 ways you can become a slave. Your parents could sell you as a slave. You could lose a war. You can commit a crime. Somebody could literally kidnap you. And there's probably another one that I'm not thinking of. So there's a bunch of ways. You could just fall into debt. There we go. You could just fall into debt. So anyways, the fact of the matter is there's a bunch of ways you could become a slave. In Leviticus 25, God just says you can go and buy other people as slaves. He doesn't say which ones. He doesn't say how you acquire them. He just says you can go get them.
Well, it says foreigners.
Yeah.
But my point is, if it's the case, if you're saying that it was common that people would have had papers and stuff, then I don't know why it wouldn't be reasonable to think that, look, I'm sure there's obviously a bunch of dishonest people that probably wouldn't have cared. But I think you'd have to agree that there were probably some that said, hey, you know what? I'm a child of God. I'm following God here. I know I don't want to purchase a slave who has been kidnapped. I'm going to purchase one that is as a result of debt or something. And if they've got papers, then it should be pretty easy to prove. So my view is,
so you've got a couple problems with
Hebrew law.
Yeah, so you got a couple problems with that.
To me, that would be reasonable.
Well, you got a couple problems with that because the Hebrew law didn't extend to the foreign people. The foreign people didn't practice Hebrew law. And again, you could be sold as a slave with or without papers. And even in the Bible,
that'd be irrelevant.
Even in the Bible, Joseph was sold as a slave. Were there any papers exchanged?
I don't know. Probably
There were
not. No.
they're not in the story. Okay, so it wasn't uncommon for
Yeah.
somebody to be kidnapped, captured in a war, whatever, and then sold as a slave. The only thing you need to pass
Sure.
a slave off is somebody that is willing to buy them. That's literally the only requirement. Now, whether you have papers or not,
Well, what was the purpose of all the papers?
so well, because if you were emancipated, you needed something to declare that you were no longer a slave. And most of the papers that free people had were papers of emancipation.
Yeah, but that implied that people. But I think you're hurting your own argument there,
I'm
because
not.
now you're saying that it would have a paper talking about emancipation, meaning that people would value the law. And I'm saying, okay, well, if people value the law,
I
then
mean, let me
it
just
seems
explain it
like a
for you
Hebrew
again.
who knows Exodus 21.
So
Well, can I finish real quick before you?
I know because you're not on topic.
Like you don't want me to finish because I don't know
It's
if you're getting
because you're
nervous
just wasting
or what it
time.
is, but
It's because you're wasting time. So I
no,
didn't say.
I think
I'll
you're
just
hurting your own
I'll just
argument.
explain it again because I'm not hurting my argument. The majority of slave papers, whatever you want to call them, were papers of emancipation, meaning a slave who was emancipated got a contract of some nature, typically clay tablet. So a slave, when they were emancipated, would receive typically a clay tablet that was signed by the person that was emancipating them, and it was typically signed by like a judge or some sort of a council member or something, that who oversaw the proceedings. And then they would have that as proof that they were no longer a slave. And one of the reasons why this was necessary was because often slaves got branded with something, right? So you had the mark of a slave on your body, right? So when you become a free person and you have the mark of the slave on your body, you need a document showing that you're no longer a slave. And so most of the slave papers were papers of emancipation. But there were occasionally, you'll find contracts in the ancient Near Eastern literature where people agreed to sell themselves for a period of years. But even like in the Law Code of Hammurabi, like Law Code 117, it says to free your indentured servants after 3 years of service, which I think is more merciful than the 6 years in the Bible.
Well, the Code of Hammurabi also says if you are harboring a slave, you can be in trouble for that. That's not the case in the Law of Moses.
Somebody else's slave.
But the point I was trying to get to was you were saying, okay, so they weren't going to care. They weren't going to care if someone was kidnapped or whatever. But then you're saying they would care if someone was branded by, something as a slave and they had to have these papers. You're saying that they would care to follow the law at that point. And I'm
No, I
saying
didn't say that at
okay,
all.
what makes you think they would care? Well, okay, then I don't know
didn't
what
say
the
that.
point is of
I
saying
don't
they
know
had
if
papers.
I don't know if you just
That
can't
implies
listen
that
or
they want to
what.
respect the law.
Oh,
But
so I
you
didn't.
understand.
So I didn't say. I didn't say
deflated
any.
You
I didn't say.
deflated your whole argument, right?
I didn't, and I didn't say anything that you just said. I said.
Yeah, and I want to
So
explain
so
why.
maybe
but you
I'll
won't let me
start.
finish.
So I'll just start from the beginning and tell you what I said for the third time. So typically, when somebody was a slave and then they became free, they got a document of emancipation so they can demonstrate that they were in fact now free and no longer a slave.
Okay.
You couldn't be recaptured and placed back into slavery. Now, when the Israelites were told that they can own slaves, they weren't told how, they weren't told who, other than they came from the nations around you. Again, there are, a handful of ways somebody could become a slave. God doesn't concern himself with that. The only law he ever gives concerning slaves is do not capture free people and pass them off as slaves. That parallel passage is Deuteronomy 24:7. If somebody is caught kidnapping another Israelite, enslaving or selling the Israelite, then the kidnapper will be unalived. Thank you, Denise.
Yes.
Okay,
And what I'm telling you is what you just got through saying obviously would not apply to the people in Leviticus 25, because if they're being sold, they wouldn't have these documents in their hands saying that they can't be sold, right? So the assumption would be that under the law they were legal.
Bye.
Oh, I guess an atheist.
Well, when
I guess an atheist
Regina
couldn't
and
handle being challenged, did they?
Posterior, you yapped
I guess they
yourself
couldn't
into
handle
so
being
many
challenged.
circles. I've never seen so much circular yapping in probably. Well, I guess I have probably seen some. I'm gonna write down his name.
Let's get the win Regina in the comments and a win Zeus.
W Regina.
I
W
love my
Regina.
God.
We love Regina up in here. We love Regina. All right, he's got a long name. I've got to abbreviate it. He was making absolutely 0 points and legitimately thought that he was up here cooking. That guy legitimately thought he was up here cooking.
It was giving YT supremacy and basis of the Bible to solidify slavery, because that was the only topic that he was focused on.
He was just trying to win 1 point anywhere that he could. He wasn't actually paying attention to the topic matter being presented, which is fine. That happens. And remember, this conversation started with whether or not you have proof that Christianity is true. And he decided to go straight for slavery. That didn't work out so well for him.
That part.
And he didn't listen to anything I was saying. I had to define slavery, 8 times? How many times did I have to define slavery, chat? Was it 5, 6, 7, 8 different times?
It was 10 times. And I feel like because Regina does put a lot of effort into the Zeuses, I feel she needs an emote as well.
Oh my gosh, how do we not have a Regina emote yet?
That's all you, baby. I don't have control on that.
I'll take care of that. I'm going to get a W Regina emote up in here because you're right. She does need her own emote. Breezy's got his own emote. I don't know if y'all seen that yet. Guys, we're running out of Christians to talk to. Please tap the screen and share. Let's try to juice the algorithm and get some opposition in the box. How you doing, John?
Oh, good. How are you doing?
Good.
Hey, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not in opposition. I just wanted to say something on previous caller, but it's all right.
Oh, sorry. Well, anyways, thanks for being here, man.
Yep. Have a good one.
Cheers.
Oh, the demon eyes were for me? Oh, thank you, Denise. I just noticed that. I'm slow, girl.
The demon eyes is fun. That might be my favorite gift. All right, I'm gonna see.
Are you doing that topic that we discussed?
Not quite yet. I don't know if we want to do that just yet, but
Daddy,
I know it's a fun one. It's gonna be a fun one.
It is.
I was hoping we would get more action on this topic because we've been really banging on this topic recently. But we'll do a classic and see what we can get out here. Because right now thank you so much, Sharpie, for the demon eyes. I appreciate that. We're almost to our helmet goal as well. We got 16 out of 20 on the helmet goal. So thank you guys so much for all the likes. We're almost at 200,000 likes. We're just waiting for some opposition to get in the box. So while we're waiting on opposition, I suppose we can do some trivia. We need Lorts thank you, Jason, for the helmet. I appreciate that. We need Lorts up in here. Thank you, Techman, for the helmet. I really appreciate that. We need some jokes. Lorts. Joe's daughter, where are you? Roger, thank you so much for the helmet. I appreciate that. Guys, I think did we hit the goal? I think we just did it. Thank you so much, guys.
Yep, you got it. Now you have to make a new one.
Thank you so much. What should we do? Hand hearts. I like the hand hearts, actually. You want to do hand hearts for the next goal?
The hand hearts are cute. Yeah. I like the corgi butts.
Actually, the corgi butts are dynamite. All right, we're going to do hand hearts here. All right, guys, we're still waiting on opposition. We're still waiting on opposition. There's your corgis, Hanji. Let's get some corgi butts.
Corgi butts. Here comes Breezy with the lightning of my deity.
Okay. Where did God's Shekinah glory dwell in the Old Testament? Thank you for the hand hearts. Thank you, Ghost Talker. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Steampunk and Breezy. You guys are absolutely awesome. We really appreciate you guys being here. Regina, thank you so much for the hand hearts. question is, where did the Shekinah? It's more specific. Where in the temple did the Shekinah glory dwell? Oh shoot! You know what? I forgot to do something. Give me
Who?
1 second.
Me? I know.
No, that was.
It took you a second, but you caught it.
Hold on just a second. I've got to copy and paste something. I'll be right back.
Oh. Don't give me that shit, guys. You know me. Every time I get the corgi, I wiggle the boots. Justin knows.
Oh shoot! It won't show my sticker.
What sticker is it? I don't think I could do it. The sticker on my chicky, 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 chicky. I'm just shaking all the butts. Man, you guys just want to see
Okay,
this.
it worked
Okay,
that
you know
time.
I'm
Can you guys see the sticker right here?
No, baby.
You can't see the sticker on the screen?
Mm-mm.
Guys, can anyone see the sticker on the screen? Am I going crazy here? No? I'm hearing lots of no's.
Does it have a check mark next to it, or does it have like a something else?
Can you see it now?
Taylor G8498.
Yeah, that's the sticker.
Okay.
All right, guys, so
Context.
yeah, so let me give you some context. How do I edit the sticker? Give me a second to get a better one. So everyone knows Dave the agnostic evangelist, okay?
Yes.
Dave's daughter Taylor right now is in hospice. Okay. And she has requested, as we'll say, her make-a-wish to fly her childhood friend up to spend a couple days with her.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so we need to raise some funds. This is Dave's PayPal. It's TaylorG8498 at gmail.com. So I sent some money earlier today. Some other people in the community have sent some money, but we need to raise some money to pay for flights or for gas if she's driving, hotel stays, food, all that stuff. Because, you know, they're kids, right? And this is her dying wish, right? I hate to use that phrase. It's such a horrible phrase I never want to utter my mouth, but that's the truth of the matter.
And she's
right
young,
now.
guys. She's young.
Yeah, she's young. So anyways, they're making the arrangements for her to come and spend some time. So if you can find Dave on PayPal, please send some love and support over to Dave. I'm going to leave the sticker up for the rest of the session. I meant to put it up before. It just kind of slipped my mind. We got Lortz and Benny up in here as well.
Hey, Lars, my darling.
Lortz,
And yes,
welcome.
she is in her 20s. I believe 19 or 20 on the nose. Don't quote me on it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Joe's daughter, welcome in.
Hey, I'm gonna once soon as I get off here, I'm gonna donate to him. I think that's sad. But
It's heartbreaking to be in that position, and I got to be honest. If I was in that position, I wouldn't be handling it as well as Dave would. I'd be a nightmare.
yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, here's my joke for today. This guy decided to break into a house and take something small. So as he was searching through the house, he heard a voice that says, "Jesus is watching you." He stopped and he thought to himself, he said, "That must be my old Sunday school voice playing tricks on me." So he kept searching, and 5 minutes later, he heard that same voice again saying, "Jesus is watching you." Well, he shone his flashlight in the direction he thought the voice was coming from, and he saw a parrot. And he asked the parrot, "What is your name?" And he said, "My name is Moses." He said, "What kind of people would name their parrot Moses?" The parrot replied, "The same kind of people that would name their pit bull Jesus."
See what you could do with yourself when you don't work.
Bye.
You see,
That's
you
kinda
see,
so-
you see what you can do with your free time when you don't work.
Yes, that's what I can do when I don't work. Make up silly jokes. I have one more. One more.
I want to hear it. Let's have it.
Jesus walked into a hotel one day, threw 3 nails down on a desk, and said, "Can you put me up for the night?"
Is the bed
I
made of wood?
mean,
Talk to you guys
is
later.
is Justin the Jesus in this scenario? I'm just asking for myself.
In this scenario, I don't think it is. Oh, Lord.
I see, baby.
All right, guys, we still have no opposition in the box. I'm going to get Benny up in here. Guys, the screen name here is actually a Gmail. It's taylorg8498@gmail.com. This is the PayPal for Dave. If you could please help us all out supporting this, I think everyone would be greatly appreciated. Benny, what you got, buddy?
Hey, I got a few trivia questions for you. I bought this awesome book. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it. It's the complete book of Bible trivia. I also have a QR code. Oh, it's been covered by the sticker.
Let's try it now.
But this is for the live that I'm test running here for YouTube over on my account. It's been running pretty great, actually, over there. You can have a few guests and some people chatting over there. So that's exciting.
Fantastic. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah. So
Thanks
if
for
you
putting that
wanna
up.
Screenshot this. For now, like we can like start posting on my account, and I think there's a way that you can like allow me to stream onto your account so it can look like your account's streaming. But let's get to some fun trivia here. I have a few questions for you.
Yep.
Okay. What king had the first birthday party in the Bible?
Oh, shoot. What king had the first birthday party?
It was in Genesis.
I mean, I think the first king mentioned is in Genesis 14 with the wars of Abraham, but I'm thinking like was it King Abimelech? No, who is it?
Pharaoh at the time of Joseph.
When he
was
took
in Egypt.
Sarah.
Yes, Genesis 40:20.
Oh, I was wrong. Oh, wait, his birthday's mentioned in 40?
Yeah, Genesis 40:20 is what this one says.
No way. I haven't noticed that before.
This trivia book, it has some weird stuff in it. Like there's all kinds of like subjects and stuff. I bought it at a used bookstore.
Always worth it.
Oh, I know. Let's see. Where was the first beauty contest in the Bible and who won it?
Well, I thought that was with Esther, but I think the real answer is Abishag. But it's not a real contest with Abishag. They just went throughout Judea looking for a beautiful woman, and they found one. But Esther is a real competition.
Yep, it was Esther. It says the one at the court of the Persian ruler Ahasuerus. The winner was Esther. Esther 2 is where that one was found. I had another one I picked.
Yeah, God, setting the divine path for this beloved young girl to sleep with a foreign king to save his people. What a heartwarming story.
Isn't it? Isn't it always?
He had no other option.
So we're moving on to the subject here is curses. What was the only animal to be cursed by God?
Well, the cattle in Egypt get cursed during the Exodus. One of the plagues. In fact, the cattle get unalived 3 times during the plagues.
Well, I think this is more of like because the answer here is the serpent.
I think the guest got it. The first animal is the serpent to get cursed in Genesis 3:14 and 15.
Yep. That's exactly what it says.
Yeah.
And I think that's because it like changes. It takes its legs away or whatever.
Right. Actually, I agree with that answer. That's got to be the first animal to be cursed.
But this one says the only animal. So
definitely not the only animal.
Yeah, that's kind of. I mean, okay. So who was sent by the king of Moab to put a curse on Israel?
Oh, that was Balaam.
Balaam. Do you know what book?
Book of Numbers.
22, 1 through 6.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's see. I don't know. We can keep going here. I got all kinds of great questions here for you. But
keep them going because we're still waiting for opposition. We have
I
no
don't mind it.
opposition, guys. I'll put my
do
screen
not
up to
mind
see if we can get some opposition.
Yeah.
But we got no opposition. All the Christians they're too scared to get in the box apparently.
Okay, names made in heaven is the name of this subject. All right, what did God change Jacob's name to?
Oh, he changed it to Israel.
Yeah, that one I knew.
Yeah, we definitely knew that one.
Who was told
twice? He did it twice.
Yeah, he did. Who was told by God to name his son Maher Shalal Hashbaz?
Isaiah in chapter 8.
8:3. Ding, ding, ding. Correct. All right, let's keep going here. Who told Joseph what Jesus's name would be?
Wait, say that again. Who told Joseph? Oh, it was Gabriel.
Yeah, it just says an angel.
Yeah. Traditionally, the angel is believed to be Gabriel. You're right, though.
Yeah.
It just says angel. Yeah.
All right. What prophet was told by God to name his son Lo Ami?
Well, that's a good one.
There's some good ones in here.
Hosea?
Hosea. Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah.
1:9. Hosea 1:9. Let's see. Let's move down a little bit. What was Hosea told to name his daughter?
Oh, shoot.
This one might be kind of hard.
I don't recall the name of the daughter.
Yeah, I can't even pronounce it. Lo Ruhama. Lo.
Yeah.
Ruhama. It's Hosea 1:6.
They're tough. They're tough.
I was going to say, my love, the numbers have been dropping for like the last hour. Do you want to do a live restart with this background?
We could, yeah. So we'll do a live
See
restart
if we
and send
can
it
push
out.
it back. Yeah.
Well, let's do that. Let's do a live restart, and then we'll see if we can get an FYP push because everybody up here right now they're all atheists.
I know. Well, hopefully we can get this YouTube thing going and we can get some people to either come over to TikTok from YouTube or
maybe
get a phone number up on your background for them to do like call-ins. We'll figure something out.
Right. And guys, please, I'm going to restart the live. I'm going to use the restroom real quick while we're away. While I'm away, go to taylorg8498@gmail.com on PayPal and help out our buddy Dave and his daughter Taylor. Please send some love their way. They're trying to do everything they can for Taylor at this particular time. And we all know how these things are. It costs money. So please support a fellow member of the community who's been here to support everybody else. Anyways, guys, we'll be yes, Dave Grinder or whatever. I forget his last name, but that's it. You got it. You'll find him on PayPal under taylorg8498@gmail.com. But take a screenshot of the thing so you don't forget it when I end the live, and then go do the thing. And I'll be back in just a minute or two, and we'll